and there it's important in lines like this, no? Like this. Husband comes home, sees her ass, no?
Yes.
Fucker, raises the skirt, bam, bam, bam. And after, okay, the usual 4 or 5 minutes, he says, I finished. How did you, Han? No, I still have 4 lines. They are absolutely, you know that even that's the beauty there. They should go together. Even the Palestinians in Ramallah.
Yes.
First, many of them are Christians.
Yes.
And they have also an excellent sense of humor.
Right.
I heard there the best, not even so vulgar, Jesus Christ jokes. I think I told you on the phone, those 2 that I quote. It's wonderful. They are civilized people. Everybody knows that Palestinians are the Jews of the Arabs.
We spent time in Nazareth. We actually spent a lot of time with a great Palestinian comedian who I think could be a star in America even.
Yeah.
And sort of changed the whole political...
I know, because my friend Udi Aloni,
Okay.
I think he also knows that comedian with whom you were there.
Yeah, there's a few. There's a comedy scene in Palestine.
But you know what? Our media don't report. They are not crazy, all crazy religious fanatics. Like they have a singer, some rock band who sings beautiful songs against honor murders and so on.
Yes.
They are not all fanatics.
No,
the whole movement there.
Yes.
They have. And in Ramallah, they showed me, you have gay club, you have things like this.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Gaza is another.
Well, right, exactly. Where the fight, but that's true even in Iraq. Where the fighting is different than where the people are trying to figure things out. We were up in Erbil. You know, again, a lot of these imaginary places. Is Kurdistan a real place, or is Kurdistan an imaginary place in Iraq? Is Palestine a real place, or is
But
Palestine
this is a very good
imaginary?
point because we are making, because, for example, it's clear that Hollywood, what Bertolt Brecht,
Yes.
he writes about his imaginary Hollywood.
Yes,
He's
right,
got
exactly.
nothing
Yeah.
to do.
He loves the detachment of it also.
Yeah,
to be able to look at it as a kind of a fictional thing.
Even a real place.
Yes.
To really understand it, you have to look at it as an imaginary
Absolutely.
place.
Well, I grew up here. I grew up in Coney Island. This
Really?
is where I grew up. I grew up a couple of blocks from here.
Really?
And
Was it already Russian?
It was old Russian when I first lived here, and those people died out. Like the people who left in the turn of the
Did you
century.
notice this tendency, which worries me a lot, that now in Hollywood, one of the targets, like Palestinian, Arab terrorists, blah blah, of action movies, the bad guys, tend to be Russian mafia.
Yes,
they are
yes.
now accepted as one of the ultimate figures of.
I think Hollywood has meetings and decides who the villain will be that year in the action movies. One year it's the Palestinians, one year it's the Arab terrorists, whoever they are.
Then
generic.
Latino American narco mafia.
Yes,
of
the
course,
narcos,
yes.
yes, exactly. And the Russians are always convenient.
But it only started with this new explosion of oligarchs in the 90s.
Right,
I don't think
right.
it was
I think
before.
you're right. I don't think they saw them as evil evil enough to kind of overturn
No,
things.
before in the 80s they were modest, terrified victims of Stalinist
Yes,
color.
that still was being felt at that
Sorry,
time.
another thing which is important.
Yes.
Just to make it clear.
Yes.
First, I can talk blah blah, and you are the censor. I don't have to worry.
Yeah.
You find somebody with my. You find somebody with a similar voice. You can fake it, or you can dub me.
I'm going to work out my impression.
Yeah. Second thing. Tell me the standards. It's not a problem for me, but by mistake, the F word can enter. It's better to avoid it.
No, not at all.
F word is allowed.
Totally good.
Because you know, I have such bad, this may amuse you. I had recently an experience in London at a book signing. A guy came to me, wanted to say, Professor, I admire your work. Please, could you write a dedication to me? Whatever you want. I warned him. I told him, listen, you're talking to a madman. Like, he said, it doesn't matter. Insulting, vulgar. He got it. I put it something like, in a dirty toilet full of urine, I fuck your mother in her ass while she's standing clean. Then he was hurt. Fuck him. I warned him 2-3 times. You know, you are talking to a madman, and I mean it when you say.
So did he take the book ultimately?
Yeah, but
that's
he
one
was
of the most
hurt.
valuable dedications.
Yeah,
you can get.
but he was another thing with my German friends or militaries they like. I signed a book till death. and then I add in brackets of our enemies, not our death. Fuck you, I don't want to die.
Right, that makes sense. That's good. All right, so let us get.
Yes.
No.
This
This is
for
Ken.
Ernest. Yeah. Hey, how are you doing?
Ken's
Hi.
going to get you.
Nice to meet you.
And also another thing, will you be running around? We talk.
Yeah, we'll
I
sit
don't
down.
talk into the camera.
You talk to me.
That's
Yes.
these two basic things.
Yes, and I
At
do have
work, I
questions.
will not. Don't be afraid. I will not.
I'm
and
not
also,
afraid.
although spontaneously,
excited.
none of too much of this and no.
So we're going to drop this down the back of the shirt.
Now you will want something after you
Yes,
talk
he
to
does.
me. Did you see Russian music? My tastes are strange. I much prefer Mussorgsky. He's the true genius, very
Yes.
dark. The same as, although now the popular appeal is 20th century on Shostakovich.
Right, he's been kind of redeemed.
Yes. No. Prokofiev is more. Shostakovich made. You know what? You know a little bit about Shostakovich. You know his opera. Stalin was horrified. He was almost arrested.
Yes.
Opera Lady Macbeth.
Right.
It's a much darker story.
Yes.
Not that Stalin was right, but the mystery is not why Stalin prohibited it. It's open sex there. The mystery is why 1 year and a half before it was prohibited, it was the greatest mega success. 70, not performances, different staging, just in Soviet.
Wow.
You know what's the story?
No.
It changed. A poor girl married to a rich peasant, farmer, kills him and his father. This was the epoch of decolonization, liquidate the rich. And very astutely, Shostakovich manipulated this.
So he was kind of trying to fool Stalin by doing this?
No. He was much more also of an opportunist.
Okay,
His idea was, let's do something that fits the political moment. What fitted the political moment of the day was killing rich farmers.
Right.
So, because the original Nikolai Leskov's story is much more against the heroine.
Yes,
She's portrayed as a pure evil. Here, she becomes a proto-Soviet.
Yeah, that's interesting because again, in the original, obviously, Lady Macbeth is kind of like the behind the
Is
scenes.
this like Teresa Racan or Zola? Is this typical objective naturalist portrait of a monster woman?
Right,
Here she becomes a heroine.
Yes.
Why? Because she kills a rich farmer. That's the order of the day. There,
She's actually revolutionary in a way. Yes.
So here it is.
Because even the way she encourages Macbeth in the original play, you might even be able to interpret that as like sort of trying to overthrow the system in some way.
While Prokofiev is a much more mysterious phenomenon. Okay, let's not lose time with this. Do you want me? Do you want to give me? Okay, you control everything, no?
I will control everything.
I already signed that, so you own me.
Yes,
so whatever you do, you can digitally cut out my head, put it in some hardcore fuck scene on the head of that. I always sympathize in hardcore movies how the guys fucking. They're usually with tattoos, some poor sailors. They're the true hard workers. I sympathize with them, you know.
All right, so let's.
Any instructions?
Take a peek at the other rooms, or should we?
I think we should do it here because I like it. I like the daylight is nice.
Sorry. You know how I misunderstood you? You want to take a pee in the other room, and he answering, "No, we can pee here. We can pee here." You know, I always look at him as infected by Borat and Larry David. But I will tell you something. You were also involved in Seinfeld, no?
Yes,
you know which is absolute myth in my country.
Really?
Were you involved in that one? The episode of that Nazi guy, pseudo-Nazi, how is he called Nazi, who is selling food and terrorize them? No, you don't get, you remember that episode?
In the limousine?
No. He has a small place where he's selling some soup. Soup nuts. That's absolutely, I sympathize. I was so identified with the guy. I was on his side. My God, that's what we need.
I think a lot of people were on his side, actually.
Yeah, and it was so tragic when they stole the recipe from him. I was on his side.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of bad behavior in Seinfeld. It's an amoral show. It had, our motto was no hugging, no learning. That was the motto of the show. We actually rewarded bad behavior. It was because most sitcoms. Look at the picture that just finished.
I know.
Most sitcoms were about these fake moral endings. We were. Thank you very much. Great. We were committed to the amorality.
So to ask you the usual obscene question, apart from Larry and Seinfeld himself.
Yes.
Did you also become a millionaire based on that? No, not enough. Or
well, we don't have
okay, you didn't become poor because of that.
Right, I did not become poor. That's true.
Let's put it in a modest way.
That would be fair. That would be a fair assessment.
It's nice, but another thing, all my friends are asking me.
Yes.
It's a fake or was really a model that plays just 2 blocks down from Columbia University, which is supposed to be the Seinfeld place? What's the reality there?
That's the place. It's called Tom's Diner.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's the real
because
place.
It's opposite to that. Recently, 20 years back,
that's not where they used to actually hang out. That's where the show coffee shop is. But in reality, they hung out at a coffee shop in Midtown somewhere.
So you didn't build it on the set. It was a real.
The interior was. The whole show was shot in Los Angeles for the most part. The whole show was shot in Los Angeles.
Oh my God! Now you really know how to ruin my last illusion.
Isn't it my job to demythologize these things?
Yeah.
So, all right. So why don't you sit down there?
Here.
Yes, right there.
I just, treat me as an idiot. I need clear. I'm a Leninist. You know what Lenin said? Democracy, yes. Anarchy, no. The way I read it is democracy, yes, if you know who is the boss.
Right. So based on that, please have a seat.
I want to make free decisions, but I want somebody to tell me how to choose what do I really
You want freedom. You want freedom from choice, really.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to just fix you up.
Should I be attentive to anything like, I don't know, not to wave too much, not to move my chair? Give me just
to set it on the table
instructions.
Yes, please. Okay, great. Let's start. Because I'm pretty sure I could ask one question and we can pretty much go from there.
No, I get lost, I get repetitive,
I
so it's good thing that you have done
I did my research and my
executive power. I want you to do a good Stalinist job. Symbolically,
to control the boundaries.
Not only this, but also figures in the background should disappear from.
Well, there will be. And this is actually a great.
But now, finally, America is learning from Stalin's wisdom. Do you remember when was it? Some 3-4 years ago, that Janet Jackson scandal, her breast.
Yes.
I read that after that, they adopted the Stalinist procedure of 1 second or what delay.
Yes.
Finally, they are learning from true people's democracy.
Technology is actually kind of promoting fascism in a way. It's a way to control things.
Although I wrote about this is so interesting.
Tell me.
Not that I praise Stalin, but did you notice? I wrote in some of my past books. I don't know it. This difference, which are very significant.
Yes.
Apparently superficial, but they tell you something between Stalinism and Nazism. For example, maybe you know it, my big example. After a speech, Hitler delivers a speech. The crowd is applauding. Hitler just accepts the applause. A Stalinist leader always stands up and joins the applause.
Wow.
This is one difference. Second difference, very interesting. Do you know, I got this not from some leftist, from the famous liberal Anne Applebaum Gulag.
Yeah.
Do you know that in Gulag, every year on Stalin's birthday, they gathered all the prisoners and they had to sign a telegram.
Wow.
Wishing all the best to Stalin. You cannot imagine this. It's meaningless in the Nazi. You gather all the Jews to sign telegram to Hitler.
Dear Adolf, happy birthday.
Another thing interesting. The monster trials, which were of course directed, or organized, but in a very specific way. The accused was, of course, through torture, pressure, taught to repeat the exact lines. And why? It's a very tragic position. At the same time, you were the lowest scum, blah, blah, but at the same time, and that's the perverted legacy of enlightenment in Stalinism.
Yes.
At the same time, even the lowest traitor was supposed to have access to universal reason from which he could see the truth about himself. For example, they ask Laszlo Reich, famous Hungary anti-Stalin trial, how did you become a traitor? And he said, already when I was a small boy, my parents taught me to hate the working class and so, where does he talk from? This is typical enlightenment. We all are part of universal reason. That's also why interesting. In Nazism, it's not part of their universe to organize a big trial where the leading Jews would have admitted that there is a plot. Right. This is one thing which tragically, nonetheless, maybe makes Nazism a tiny little bit worse. Because in Stalinism, at least you had to admit it. Yes. With all the horror torture, it means you are still considered minimally a free human. While in Nazism, if you are a Jew, the only thing I have to prove is that you are a Jew. It doesn't matter what you... But aren't these things so interesting? You can see how, in what different way, nonetheless, the system...
Well, which of those two systems do you think were funnier? Was
Stalinism, definitely.
Stalinism, tell me why.
Because it added, because we all know, comedy is always, one of the formulas of comedy, is always this minimal self-distance. Like, a comedy is when, Hegel already says this, that you no longer have simply the split between me as an actor and me as acting a certain role. But me as the actor becomes part of my role so that I'm able to comment on what I'm doing, you know.
Right.
In a comedy, you always have this weird split where, you know, where if you ask me three greatest achievements of American culture, are, one is this. Didn't she introduce it? You must know it better on me before Lucille Ball or what, you know? This idea of where they consciously break the great fiction movies rule, not look into the camera.
Yes.
When she is, and you look into this is comic element. Another that
it's Brechtian also, isn't it? Drawing on a kind of a Brechtian.
Yes. Another great invention of United States is canned laughter. I've written pages on it. This is, you know why? Because it's magical thinking. I spoke with some psychologists. They are wrong. They think that the point of canned laughter is, in this Pavlovian way, to make you laugh. No, the set laughs for you.
Yes.
The trick is you are tired in the evening, you watch it, the TV set laughs for you, and you feel relieved as if you...
It does the work. It does the work for you.
That's, and the last genius, they're among the best American jokes. Two. One, all those, you know, good doctor. First bad news, then good news.
Yes.
Some of them, some are stupid.
Yes.
But some are ingenious.
Do you have a favorite?
A favorite, it's the one... Okay, we know the usual story. Like you say first bad news, okay, you know, this is standard. Hegelian, negation of negation.
Yes.
This is not even a good joke, just to give you an example. It's like, okay, I'm your doctor. The bad news, we discovered you have cancer. You will be dead in 2 months. Then you say, what can be the good news? We also discovered you have Alzheimer and you will forget the bad news before you reach home.
Right.
But then there is an ingenious dialectical one.
Yes.
I tell you, first the good news, then the bad news.
Okay.
But then the trick is that the good news are so bad. The good news is very soon your name will be a household name for a new little disease. Who wants to hear the bad news?
Yeah.
And my favorite other, they are exquisite, is the jokes about this sexually innocent idiot introduced into sex by an experienced woman.
Right. It's often like in a farm.
Yeah. But what I like is what a deep philosophical lesson. Like my favorite. Sorry, I'm sure you know it,
please.
But the structure is that a guy is introduced into sex, and the woman teaches that, look, put down your trouser. She masturbates him. You see now. You have erection, I have here vagina, touch me, I'm wet. Now you penetrate me, and now you move in, out, in, out. You know what the idiot says after half a minute? Can't you finally decide it's in or out? Very deep philosophically.
Yes.
It makes the point, that's for me the greatest legacy, if you ask me, of. But really,
that's the apex of American culture, basically, is that joke.
Yeah, but I take it seriously.
Yes, I understand.
I'm not laughing at it, because you know when I use this canned laughter example.
Yes.
Because people usually treat as primitive those in Greece, some other countries where they still exist. I visited them in south of Peloponnese, where you pay women to mourn for you. Your father dies,
Yes.
you do all the usual stuff, who will get the money, but you pay women to mourn for you.
Right.
And people say, oh, how primitive. Sorry, we are doing exactly the same thing, paying the TV set to laugh for you.
Yes, right. We have the surrogates, so we don't have to have the experience ourselves.
And no, my philosophical point here, I'm a little bit more serious, is that what if this is always the structure of humor? That is wrong to think there is a zero level where you really laugh spontaneously, whatever. It's always this minimum of distance, in this sense, what you said, a comical structure.
Right.
Which is why comedy is, for me, something that can be more tragic than tragedy.
Okay.
Okay, to very simply explain to you, tragedy still implies a minimum of your personal dignity. Like, let's imagine Auschwitz.
Okay.
A Nazi officer tries to beat you, torture you, and you do this heroic gesture. Oh, no, kill me, but you will not break me, and so on. If you were to shoot an Auschwitz movie with such a scene, it would have been ridiculous painting Nazis in a much too soft way.
Yes.
You were so much broken down there, reduced to your so-called, in Primo Levi, this Musulmanen, so-called Muslims living dead. It doesn't work, so no wonder. So again, my idea is that it's a deep necessity in the fact that most of the good movies and unfortunately I don't include here Schindler's List on Holocaust, are comedies.
Right.
And I don't mean, unfortunately, La Vita è Bella. Did you see the Italian one, Pasqualino Sette Bellezze?
No, I don't know which one.
It's a wonder. It's a guy, Italian guy, who is arrested to Auschwitz, and there is a fat, ugly lady, his capo, and he tries to seduce her.
That's a yes, I do know
Giancarlo
that movie.
Giannini.
Yes. Is that Seven Beauties?
Seven Beauties.
Yes.
You know
okay,
why?
yeah.
Because when things are really desperate, you're close to a breakdown. The only thing that works is comedy, not comedy where you laugh like crazy, but comedy which precisely accounts for total absurdity of the situation. I even spoke with a specialist in Primo Levi, and he agreed with me. If you look If This Is a Man, there are 2-3 scenes there which portray the utmost horror.
Yes.
But it's like a comedy.
Yes,
For
definitely.
example, you remember, it always did strike me, that scene of so-called when they checked you once every 2 months, selekcja, Polish word they use selection.
Yes, okay.
The whole thing is, there was a SS doctor with a list, your number, not name, was called, and you had to run naked in front of him. He observed you for a split of a second, and then he puts into a list, like to be burned or to allowed to work more. Okay, the way Primo Levi describes it, there is, a comedy in how prisoners, just before running, they were exchanging these desperate advices, like, because the point was to appear as healthy as possible, to pinch your lips so that they are more red and so on. It was a crazy, utterly desperate comedy. And so you see, my point is, when things are really terrifying, it's another type of totally desperate comedy that enters.
Well, that's what I want to ask you, because I think it's interesting you said Stalinism was a funnier system than Nazism, but Nazism, because it was perhaps so evil, I mean, this is up to you.
Yeah, you know why?
Produced so much great comedy against it.
I will tell you why. Because Stalinism, what makes it comical are the trials. The trials are comical. Because they're a totally crazy spectacle, taken serious by nobody, and so on and so on. That was the horror of it.
Yes.
But can I give you maybe another example of how you can survive only through comedy? 20 years ago, all the newspapers were full of it, the Serb massacre in Srebrenica, the Bosnian village. A friend of mine from Sarajevo, who is a sociologist of language, told me that the surviving community there, people did survive, some people there.
Hold on one second, Ken. Let this guy...
We kept the
Now I have this wonderful idea that, you know, you are not a Stalinist. Enemies said this to ruin our...
Yes, this is purposeful. This is
Who
sabotage.
is the KGB guy.
Yeah.
Question him.
We're going to reveal that at the end of the interview. We're going to turn around and pull it there.
No, let me go on.
Yes, please.
You know that they developed survivors of Srebrenica. A very sarcastic humor set of jokes, not other Bosnians about them, they themselves.
Right.
For example, it's so tragic. For example, you have to know to understand this one, how in ex-Yugoslavia, even in Europe it was common, when you went to the butcher to buy some beef and so on, usually we cooked it and made a soup first, and then you eat the meat.
Yeah.
But the soup is better if you put some bones into it. So when you say 1 pound of good beef, please, the butcher usually asks you with or without bones.
Yes.
No? Okay, so the joke is this one. A survivor from Srebrenica goes to Germany to work, earns some money and returns and said, oh my God, I heard the prices are good. Now that Srebrenica is free again, I want to maybe buy a parcel here, no, to build a house. And asks a friend, what are the prices here? And the friend, of course, predictably answers, it depends. Do you want a parcel with or without bones? You know, like of the
right.
But they are doing this.
Yeah.
Others are not making fun at them. Why? Not because they don't think it was serious.
Yes.
It is still too traumatic for them to take it as a tragedy.
Yes.
Maybe it's one of the reasons also why, and Primo Levi again got it somewhere, why only in the okay, there are other geopolitical reasons, but I think why the Jews, it took them 15, almost 20 years to be able to develop Holocaust stories, history series. When it's too traumatic, you cannot do it. So again, the citizens of Srebrenica, this is immediate life for them there. You only can do it in a comedy. Again, that's crucial for me. Comedy is not just lighter. When things go absolutely tragic, when you no longer can play this role, I am a hero, everything is down, some type of very weird comedy returns.
It's interesting how Americans really used Nazism for humor almost immediately, from To Be or Not to Be, the Jack Benny movie, to the producers. It seems like Americans have constantly, in order to sort of diffuse the evil or the overwhelmingness of it, have turned and made a lot of great comedy at the expense of Nazis.
For me, like if you ask me,
yes.
First, Lubitsch should be rehabilitated.
Okay.
Like to be put in one of these great series from, I don't know, books are constantly written about Hitchcock and so on.
Yes.
And with my friends, we even try to do now, we will organize in Berlin conference on Lubitsch. Don't you think that the only serious debate is which one is the greatest, To Be or Not to Be, or Trouble in Paradise? These are just breathtaking movies, I think.
Yes.
And you know, which is philosophically the crucial part, you know what's so important in To Be or Not to Be? That Nazis are not simply portrayed in the standard Hollywood way as the stupid, clumsy idiots. Some of the funniest replies are from Nazi guys.
Absolutely.
You remember when Jack Benny answers the Nazi officer, did you hear about that great Polish actor? You know what he answers?
Tell me.
Yes, I did. He is doing to Shakespeare what we are now doing to Poland. And so on. This was the part which was almost censored there. Although, and I agree with you, this was not simply taking it easy and so on. It was, that's how you confront it. It was, you know, and here, would you agree or not? Here it's for me, I will even offer you a solution, a mistake for me or shortcoming of who did, La Vita è Bella, Benigni.
Benigni.
It's good to make a comedy, but then this comedy towards the end passes into sentimental tragedy. It's because you know why? The whole genre changes. Instead of authentic Holocaust horror, we get then of the hero, Benigni, this kind of a typical comical hero who, whatever troubles are, you know he will survive.
Yes,
you can
yes.
count he will. But at the end, when he doesn't survive, you get into melodrama. You know, at the end, when his son tells in
Yes.
retroactively, or if I know, would you agree or not, how I would change the ending on the movie? It would be more comical, but at the same time, much more shattering. At the end, the boy learns that his father just sacrificed himself. His father, as we all know, presented him a fake story to endure the horror there.
Yes.
That this is not really a camp, it's just a big competition.
Right.
Along
yeah.
that Larry David, where he got into trouble, who is the true survivalist.
Right. That is the question.
Yeah. And that they can leave at any point they want, and so on and so on. What do you think about just this tight, small change? At the very end, when the hero, Benigni, is to be shot, his son somehow lets him know that he knew it all the time but played the same game for him.
Right.
He knew it all the time that it's really concentration camp. But he knew that if he lets him know, his father,
Yes.
that he knows it, it would be very traumatic for his father. Like, I didn't protect really my son. And that open situation where they both discovered that they played a game.
Far more poignant and far more authentic.
More comical, but far more poignant.
I agree.
That sentimentality at the end totally...
Yes, it's one more layer also.
Yeah,
it gives it a little more depth than just a kind of a simple melodramatic solution. So I do like that very much. Are you familiar with the Jerry Lewis Holocaust movie, The Day the Clown Cried? The unfinished movie that he made?
I was told that it's actually, unfortunately, okay, I will now, you don't use this if you want, it's on your danger. Can I get it on Pirate Bay?
I think you can get scenes from it. I don't think the whole thing is put together yet in a way that's releasable. But I've seen clips from it. It's Jerry Lewis. He's wearing the kind of pajamas that they had in the Holocaust, but with patent leather shoes. And, it's Jerry Lewis playing this Holocaust clown, a Jew who is leading the children into the ovens,
Oh my God, yeah.
And so he's trying to balance the Jerry Lewis goofiness, the silliness, with the incredible seriousness of trying to lead the children.
At some point, again, that's the only way to do it. If you ask.
Yeah.
No, that's
right. It might be a masterpiece. That's kind of
yeah. And this is what I was a little bit disturbed with. In Schindler's List.
Yes.
It now it's getting more complex, but the early movies of Schindler, sorry, of Spielberg were all a variation of this Oedipal story. Bad father grows up to be a good father.
Right.
Even E.T. It's absolutely crucial. People don't notice this, that at the beginning, where E.T. appears, it's a fatherless family. You learn father ran away with a younger woman to Mexico.
Right.
And then I think the way to really read the movie is that E.T. is basically, how do you call it, a matchmaker, a mediator. All other adults are evil. Do you remember, one scientist is a good one?
Yes.
In the final scene where E.T. goes home, he's already holding his hand around the mother. So the family is reconstructed, so E.T. can go home. You have and I think unfortunately it's similar with Schindler's List, where the bad father, that Schindler, grows up, discovers himself as a good guy, saving the Jews, and so on and so on. And which is the most, although it's nicely made, even his mid-period movie, War of the Worlds.
Yes.
Forget about aliens. It's basically Tom Cruise at the beginning, bad father, he saves his children, and so on and so on. And that kind of ruins it for me. Yeah. If you.
But also it's kind of interesting. I mean, we're digressing a little bit here, but maybe Spielberg. Spielberg was really raised by his mother, and his father really wasn't very present.
I didn't know this.
And I wonder if it's his version of an autobiographical film in a way.
Maybe, but it's important thing that father can be absent, but we learned this from psychoanalysis, maybe.
Right.
That the point is not is father there or not, but how the mother refers to father.
Yeah.
Like, is the father a kind of a referent point, respectful presence for the mother? And here things get very complex, if you ask me. For example, from what I know from my gay friends, I'm tempted to say that among many gay couples or for gay people, often mother plays the role of the father. So there are two boys, but woman is there as the third point of authority, and so on and so on.
Yes.
It gets much more complex.
Yes.
No.
All right. So let's
do. Okay, let's do it properly.
No, we're doing good. We're doing great. This is all.
God, sorry, my evil. Just to let you know, I'm so tempted to. Like when you walk here I will not do it, but just that I warn you. My desire is all the time, should I put something that you will slip? No. I'm evil. Whatever.
No, it's good. That's good. I don't mind that at all.
Okay, let's begin. Okay.
No. We've begun.
Yeah,
we're deep into it, man.
No.
But so let's stay on the Nazi thing for a second, because do you think that when humor is used as a survival tool, like say, what's your opinion of the producers, for instance? It takes place many years after it was made.
Now I will tell you something. Let's skip this one, which will horrify you.
Okay.
By sheer mistake, everybody knows it in my country. I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it. Okay, fair enough.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. No, that's good. That's all right.
It happens,
We can't all see everything. You've seen almost everything.
I bluff. In my book, Enjoy Your Symptom, I have a 40-page analysis of Rossellini.
Right.
When I wrote that, I haven't seen any of the movies.
Yes.
Afterwards, I was kind of convinced by my own analysis. I've seen them, and I think it was a mistake. They are not as good as I thought.
Right.
Sometimes it's better to stick to second-hand.
Yeah.
Isn't this often one of the...
Like books could be like that also, right? It's better to not read the book sometime and just think you've read the book.
But I have another... Now we come to this more mystical, comical territory.
Right.
I made one remark to a secretary of doctor of the writer, and he told this to doctor of himself, who was mad at me. I have this strange experience of... what was it? It has Gate in the title with Nicole Kidman.
Right. Billy Bathgate. Yes.
Let me tell you something. First, I saw the movie. And I thought, okay, it's not a good movie, but you can feel the presence of a larger, better work in the background.
Yes.
So probably they just didn't capture properly the spirit of the novel. The novel must be the real thing. Then I read the novel, I was even more disappointed. And I developed a wonderful theory that you have the novel, the film, they're both failures. But in between, the repetition of the novel in the film retroactively produces a specter of a truly great work. Only through the repetition in this, and I still stick to this analysis. So I don't have these prejudices, which are usually, for example, with Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yes.
A Cult of My Friends, it's the original from 50. Did you see the Philip Kaufman version
I did.
by Donald Trump?
I liked it better.
I like it better, and people treat me as a crazy commercialized idiot or what.
No, I didn't think
so.
It was more political.
The physical process, all those sleazy sounds, how the aliens are.
I agree.
It's a better movie.
Yeah.
I mean, and also, as you said, I will tell you a comical detail.
Yes, please.
You know how at the end, you learn that people who are already possessed by aliens, they are trained, I don't know how, that, let's say I'm already possessed, you are still full human.
Yeah.
And when I see you, I say, well, some sounds like this. This was in my friend circle. For months afterwards, when we met on the street, we were greeting each other in that way.
That's great. Because we're all zombies ultimately.
We are absolutely.
We're all from a pod of some kind.
That's how I am rereading. It's not enough of a comedy, and most of my friends hate Blade Runner 49.
Okay,
I'm not saying it's a great movie, but it has many wonderful, detailed observations. For example, that, let's call it in Marxist terms, secondary contradiction between the state, Robin Wright, which is strictly apartheid, and big corporation, Wallace, Jared Leto. He's a wonderful key figure with those mechanic eyes already. Yeah. He is this absolute capitalist drive which doesn't care. We can all be replicants or whatever. This is a wonderful point. Then it's a point of genius that you saw the movie.
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh my God! Okay, let's drop it. It's too much.
No. Please go on.
No. It will.
I'm a big Philip K. Dick fan, so I know Blade Runner. I know where the book that it came from, but I haven't seen the movie
which
yet.
I like pretty much because I'm such a fan of alternate histories, especially, and all my Jewish friends are the same. If you want comedy, once I was sitting in Jerusalem with a couple of my Jewish friends, and we were debating this eternal historian's obsession. What big mistake did Hitler make not to win?
Yes.
And automatically, my Jewish friends, half of their parents or relatives were killed in Auschwitz and so on.
Sure.
We all found ourselves in a situation of arguing for Hitler. Idiot, why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do this?
That's great.
And the result, even historians are coming to this result. It's not that he shouldn't have attacked Soviet Union.
Right.
He should do it a year later. Hitler's big mistake was he was obsessed with this Napoleon idea of Russia. He should have more helped Mussolini take Egypt. Then Egypt, this would force Turkey to join his side, and he would take the Middle East. India would be squashed between Germany in Iran there and Japan on the other side. And then 1 year later, he would have been in a much better position, together with Japanese, to attack Russia. This is even almost the main...
Yeah, that's a really interesting...
No, but what shocked me is again how all my God, idiot, why didn't he do this? Why didn't
It's like talking about football at a certain point. It really is. It's handicapped.
But another point of... It's not comedy, but that's why I don't like them. I'm too stupid. You have to have quick reflexes. It's fashionable to say today, and you would agree, earning your bread that way, that if anything great is happening today, to put it in Hegelian idealist terms, the world spirit is moving from cinema to TV series.
Yes.
Great things are happening there. And TV series are themselves changing. It's no longer every week, Thursday evening, we see it.
Right.
Already I read somewhere the majority of people download the whole season and then you spend a week. Okay, but people underestimate the incredible, not only financial strength, but even, I would not say artistic, but narrative power of video games. You know that 3-4 years ago, they started to turn around more money than movies and TV combined. And what interests me is this one, how a certain structure of subjectivity, which is again that of comedies, this comical undeadness, that we know, for example, already from Tom and Jerry and cartoons. You are Tom, I'm Jerry, whatever. I run over you with a truck. I slice you in pieces. No problem. In the next scene, we start again. The first to formulate this undeadness was Marquis de Sade. This is what Lacan and others noticed. If you take Juliet or whatever, the beautiful girl is tortured all the time, but strangely, in the next scene, she appears again in all her beauty and so on, And so, incidentally, you have the same circular time where it's kind of a, to put it in technical terms, oral honor universe with no Oedipal, castration, death. You find it also in standard hardcore pornography. Because you notice how, they do it, erection, you have to see, and then they never take a moment to use the Kleenex to wipe the sperm. It just goes endlessly on. What I'm saying is that it's exactly the same principle in video games usually. No, you have 10 lives, you die, you start again. And I think it's something extremely interesting in this new sense of temporality where the time is circular. Death is just an event which gives you a new lease on life and so on. And I think that a sociologist friend of mine developed how this same circular temporality also determines, it's not just fiction, our real life. Like, he noticed how love affairs today have the same structure. You don't commit yourself fully. I don't want now to be
you're fine.
I don't want to be, the nicest dirty remark that somebody gave me, because Not in the sense of harassment, but physically. I don't care how I'm dressed with this. It's no longer, some idiots called me 10 years ago Borat of philosophy.
Right, I've seen
now
that.
I was called Harvey Weinstein of philosophy.
No.
That's the latest. So again, you treat your love commitments the same way. I try it with you. It doesn't go, okay, I return to zero, I make it again.
Yes.
And it's not necessary to do it at this primitive level. For example, the movie by the same guy, Denis Villeneuve, his previous modest hit, that goes in a very refined way in this circularity arrival.
Right.
So I think this is what interests me as a philosopher. This circular structure, new experience of time, where it's no longer this linear temporality, but we can go back to 0 point and start. And this also prevents tragedy. The structure, in some sense, becomes comic.
Because it always begins again.
Yeah, it always begins again.
The ending isn't really the ending.
It's Tom and Jerry. And so
how do you feel then about, you're talking about TV series and the fact that people don't watch live TV so much and there's not that appointment viewing, but you can tape it all, binge view it. But what about the next level of technology, the social media, which is allowing a lot of so-called comedians to bypass even the mainstream media in order to put their message out, and a lot of that is actually the right wing is using that.
That's what I wanted to tell you.
Yes, let's talk about that a little
Here
bit.
we see how the old liberal left, who put such high hopes, no longer mediated by some alienated central agency, this multiple communication. Well, the new right is much better at it, but what worries me more is that in some sense, I like a certain degree of centralization, but in the sense of there is a big public space, and it matters that something appears there. Now, if we get this dispersion, all of us have our own media and so on, this will contribute to this parcelization, dispersion, and so on. So I'm not so glad about it, which is why, we can maybe change the canon, but I'm basically for canon. It should be less racist and so on.
Yes.
But the canon has a function to give you certain central points of reference.
Yes.
If you lose this, we enter a confused universe where people can be much more easily manipulated and so on.
Yes. That's great.
But speaking about humor, nonetheless, let's go on to more interesting points. Because we already talked about this on the phone.
This is good,
My basic point about humor, especially political humor, is that it's a very ambiguous thing. I know very well how it has emancipatory, liberating side. I'm not only talking about this stupid level when people laugh, they feel more relaxed, but at a more radical level, for example, that's for me the problem with political correctness. Let's say we come from different cultures. It doesn't matter which degree of difference. And first, we treat each other respectfully, and it's this horrible politically correct game, like, oh, what is your food? Oh, what is your culture? Your stupid folkloric dances? Or this is just polite distance.
Okay.
But the true miracle comes where we suddenly really connect. And I claim it can only be done through a slight exchange of obscenity. This happened to me in China, where I was debating with some philosopher that it was all this respectful, polite. Then I risked it and made a slight dirty joke and so on. And they started, it totally changed the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I'm well aware of this liberating aspect of humor, even and especially obscene humor. But I think this is not all, because one of my founding epiphanies experiences is, I remember in late 70s, early 80s, when politics became a little bit more open in ex-Yugoslavia, so there were small dissident gatherings. It was a nice example of how obscene humor can be used in the service of power.
Yes.
We were at a dissident gathering where some dissident who was imprisoned reported in a very tragic voice of his fate. And then a guy of whom we discovered later that he was a state provocateur, you know what he did it? Not the official Stalinist way, how dare you talk like this, we live in socialist democracy, but like when he was saying something, this guy, through this pure obscenities, he tried to ruin the performance. Or another of his strategies was, but what do you want? All politics is a whore, is all corruption, this total dismissal and so on. So my favorite story here is the following one.
Yes.
First, I thought it's only in my country. But then I discovered, when I visited Russia, Poland, Czech Republic, that they had the same myth in all these countries. That there was an ultra-secret department of secret police where they were fabricating political jokes. Not against the enemy, anti-imperialists, because they make a simple calculation. People are frustrated.
Yes.
If you feed them with the right jokes, they will feel, oh, but we did strike back and so on, and there will be a lot less of more dangerous, brutal, because the meaning of political joke is not only they are stupid, those in power, but let's make fun of them, who cares? It doesn't exactly incite to activity. So although I think this was not true, it was never proven, and also it's interestingly theoretically wrong, because although jokes can be fabricated, but it's interesting how you should never present a joke as your invention. Mm-hmm. The formula is, I heard this joke, or whatever.
That's true.
You never. True. This is why. This is the most convincing theory. There is a story by Isaac Asimov, not my favorite sci-fi writer, but a short story called Jokester, where some linguists claim that mystical moment when God created humans out of apes, made them, was by telling them a joke. And they try to reconstruct the original joke, whatever. So, what I'm saying is that I know that in Stalinism, okay, maybe there are extreme points where this no longer works, but at least in everyday socialism, I claim jokes, Eastern Europe absolutely played a positive role.
Yes.
Positive in the sense of ultimately allowing the regime to function even better. And it's not only this, the most interesting part was for me the last years of socialism, when communists saw the writing on the wall, it's over. So
literally the writing on the Berlin Wall.
Almost literally, yeah. So to save themselves in Yugoslavia, which was actually a little bit more liberal, it's wonderful detail, they even started at political gatherings to tell jokes about themselves, to make them popular, and some of them were even not so bad. Like I remember a famous Croat, big communist politician, was asked by a journalist, how did your trip to Rome, state trip, went? And he even made a good series of jokes of how stupid he is. They also have in English, in Europe, chapel means chapel, Sistine Chapel, but it also means capella, like the small band that plays in a cafeteria. And he said it was all confusion. I was told to go and see Sistine Chapel, then I checked in all restaurants, Sistine Chapel played nowhere. Then I was told to go and see Figaro's Wedding. I checked all the churches, nowhere was Figaro. And it went on like 4 or 5, but wasn't this a weird situation?
Yes.
When like those in power themselves got the point and used these jokes to... And I think, if you ask me, I'm not kidding here that, although, again, I am ambiguous here, you definitely have this socially constructive role of jokes. Nonetheless, they were maybe in the same way as I said, what are the greatest achievements, doctors' jokes and so on, of American culture. Maybe the greatest cultural loss of Eastern Europe of the fall of communism was the disappearance of good political jokes, if you ask me.
But you're saying that the government itself were the perpetrators of the jokes on themselves.
Perpetrators. They told, this was at the end only.
Yes.
At the end only.
So the oppressor, that's what I wanted to ask you about, the oppressor versus the oppressed in terms of humor, and that's one of the first things we ever talked about.
We have this even at two levels.
Yes.
On the one hand, in every dictatorship, the oppressors have their own, not so much joke as cruel irony. It is humor towards, and this is my big lesson in ex-Yugoslavia, at least in the last 10, 15 years. To be part of the inner elite, nomenclatura, you had to have an ironic attitude towards the official ideology. Okay. And it's almost a tragic story for me. I had in the 70s 2 friends who were simply, it was slightly stupid of them, but nonetheless, who were sincere believers in the system. They lost their job. Because nomenclatura higher thought, my God, if they seriously believe in it, they will soon discover that it's not like that, blah, blah. For them, taking seriously the official ideology was the first step towards dissidence. Wow. And it was so interesting to note how, through a set of encoded, not publicly recognized, but nonetheless strictly encoded practices, you had to signal this distance. I will tell you another story. Yes. I was happy in Slovenia because we are a small nation, 2 million people. So for us, and this was even in a way nice, funny, General Secretary of the party was not as in Soviet Union, big guy, you see him in a limousine, maybe passing by. My God, he walked along, you could meet him on the street, no? So once, when I was young, I was a communist, of course, I listened to a speech to young communists by the General Secretary, and there he claimed 2 things. That you communists, young, you should study Marxism, not just Communist Manifesto, you should read both volumes of Capital, and you should always follow the 4th thesis on Feuerbach. Philosophers have only interpreted blah, blah, blah. And then afterwards, because we were mingling with him, I approached him and say, Comrade Secretary General, I just want to draw your attention that you committed a double mistake there. There are 3 volumes of Capital and it's thesis 11. I got an answer of a lifetime. You know what he told me? No. I know this, but that was my message. I don't care. Wasn't this an incredible?
Yeah, that is...
How openly distance was included. Wow. And it was, again, strictly codified in what, and this is where what fascinates me so much in how ideology functions, it enters. This idea of how every ideology is not just the set of official values, rules, but a much more subtle set of how you are expected to violate these rules.
Right.
And if you don't do this, you are much more excluded than openly opposing these rules. Yes. This fascinated me always immensely. Like, to speak about comedy, my greatest lesson in ideology and comedy, where I can tell you an experience of mine, probably you don't know it, it's just in some small, half-forgotten book of mine, was serving the army. Armies are paradise for me. No, I hated it. Paradise in the sense of how army life pretends to be discipline, sacrifice, regulated, but at the same time you have all these fragging, obscenities and so on, which are absolutely crucial to see how it functions. So I had an experience of this. When I was serving Yugoslav army, I once reported, claimed that I was a little bit ill, so I was sent to a doctor who was doing a collective exam. 10 of us were sitting there, and then each of us had to stand up to him, and something incredible happened. A friend of mine, an Albanian, stood up and said, I have a pain in my penis. Everybody started to laugh because in Serbo-Croat, boli me kurac, which means I don't give a damn, literally. Then he said, no, I mean it literally. Okay, doctor told him, pull your trousers down, show me. And okay, doctor said, what's wrong? He said, when I pull the skin down from the top, it hurts. Doctor said, no, you pulled it down now, doesn't hurt. The guy said, okay, only when I have erection. Then the doctor said, okay, masturbate. Comedy entered, because with all of us around, the guy desperately tried to masturbate, he didn't get erection. So then doctor noticed that there was a wash basin in the same room with some of those pre-pornographic stupid pictures, like you have it like this, it's a dressed lady. You turn it like this. Okay, and then he approached with this a guy, he made a comedy and said, look at it, look that legs, look those breasts, masturbate it. Are you a man or not? It was a comedy. The doctor even winked at us, we all laughed like crazy. And then I got it. There was absolutely nothing subversive in this. This is a necessary other part of military authority. Right. This was not, it was subversive, undermining authority. No, military authority absolutely relies on this obscene solidarity.
Yes.
All this, even with homosexuality, some of my gay friends didn't like this example, but nonetheless, it's meant absolutely pro-gay. In my unit, there was a phrase, you must remember this in Serbo-Croat language, which we spoke in the army, although I'm a Slovene. The term for sucking a dick is not to suck, but to smoke.
Okay.
And the way we greeted each other in the morning was not good morning, but I'll suck yours. And the other answers, okay, and I'll suck your... some exchange totally ritualized.
Yes.
The beauty is that we didn't laugh. It was a totally objectified formula. No? So, you know what shocked me so much in the army? How it was, of course, the most homophobic institution. If a soldier was discovered to be really gay, it was the ritual. With belt every night, somebody put a pillow on his head so that he couldn't see the others were beating him. Absolutely homophobic.
Yes.
But at the same time, I never saw a community so totally penetrated by homosexual innuendos. Like when we were waiting in line for lunch, whatever, the standard game was you wait, somebody in the back sticks a finger up yours, quickly pulls it out, and then you look back and it wasn't me there. It's absolutely crucial, this radical ambiguity. Some kind of a thwarted, perverted homosexuality is not only totally tolerated, but even required.
Right.
At the same time...
Necessary.
Yeah, necessary. But at the same time, the moment it passes into, let's call it, actual, serious homosexuality, you are out. But again, at this level, I like obscene rituals, not this stupid male logic, dirty, but this objective function that they play. Another story, the last one, which is comedy, but comedy playing an absolutely positive role this time. My best friend in the army was an Albanian soldier. We were both university educated, so when we met each other, we greeted every morning. Then one morning, he wanted to signal, that was the point of this obscenity, that he really wants to be friend with me. And in the army, the only way to do it was through an obscenity. So instead of saying good morning, and this was important to come from an Albanian who were very sensitive to insulting mother, sister, more than wife, he greeted me with, I fuck your mother. I knew what's expected from me. To just return with a symmetrical obscenity. Believe me, I never had problems with this. I instantly answered him, go ahead after I finish with your sister. Some obscenity, typical male chauvinist exchanging of means. But you know what was so fascinating? Then we embraced each other like we are friends now. And then, every time that we met, this became a ritual. we didn't even have to say the whole phrase. When we greeted each other, he said, mother, I said, sister. And that's the beauty. We didn't even laugh. It was this pure token of solidarity, like we are friends.
Yes.
And again, I like this pure ritualization. Now I will give you another example.
Yes.
Did you see the movie, maybe too sentimental, but I like the ending. Did you see this new hit now, Wind River?
No, I have not seen
Indian
it.
Bar.
Yes.
Just at the end.
With Jeremy Renner.
Yeah.
Yes.
At the end, the guy is a Native American Indian is mourning and paints his face with some death face. His friend, white but living with Indians, visits him and asks him, what are you doing? Where did you learn this to paint your face? And the guy says, I just invented it. Nobody taught me, and so on. And then he said, I'm just sitting here to mourn for my raped, killed daughter.
Yes.
And then after I will finish with this, I will wash this shit off my face and go. And then, of course, it's an act of, okay, male, I know, solidarity. Then the white man said, can I sit with you? Yes. And that's the end. What I like it so much, and you will see the similarity between this and that mother.
Yeah.
It's not that the white man expresses solidarity with his Indian, African-American friend as a sign of, this patronizing solidarity. It's your primitive culture. No, the Indian guy makes it absolutely clear that this is all shit.
Yeah.
So it's not I believe in it. The Indian guy is already a modern guy, lost his substantial cultural identity, faith, but nonetheless, this type of empty ritual in all its beauty, much better than if it were to be some authentic belief.
Right, a solemn thing. Right,
Yeah. Although they both know it's shit. And so on.
Yeah, incredible.
This touched me. This touched me very much.
Yeah.
Incidentally, another
well,
comic.
it's a question of awareness also.
And this touched me very much. I had one of the best encounters with, you call them now Native Americans, in Missoula, Montana.
Okay.
It was pure comedy in a loving way. Because it was wonderful to encounter them. They told me, because I called them Indians, and they told me we appreciate that. They considered much more racist Native Americans, because I'm sorry, but native is nature, and they told me, what, we are Native Americans and you are cultural Americans, or what?
Right, exactly.
And they gave me a wonderful comical answer why they prefer Indians. They say, at least our name is a monument to white man's stupidity, who thought they discovered India, and so on. And also, another ingenious moment. None of this, they despise this. They play this game for white liberals. This, you explore nature while we have more a holistic approach. We dialogue with nature. A friend of mine there wrote a short essay demonstrating that Native Americans, whatever you call them, killed more buffaloes and ruined more forests than all. But this was a moment of pride. They got it that in painting them as this holistic good, there is something terribly patronizing in it. If anything, their tragic historical experience makes them, because they are really uprooted, much more modern than we are. And that's how and they hate people who come to them, why don't you follow your tradition? They come from a poor tribe, and they gave me a wonderful answer. They said, that only the rich tribes, those who struck dirt with casinos or mining, they can finance to revitalize their old traditions. Sorry, we ordinary poor tribes, we don't have money to do that.
That's so interesting, yes.
Yeah, so again, I think that at this level also, I didn't lose the track. No. Whenever there is this false patronizing attitude towards so-called primitives, but they really are much deeper. They had a more organic attitude, and so on and so on. It's an absolute fake. Only this kind of humorous exchange, and this is the moment of humor, when they perform their ritual and they let it go, let you know, why would you take it seriously, but we don't take it seriously. We basically perform this for you. There is, maybe you read it in my early books, a wonderful story about a paradox somewhere in not New Zealand, more primitive, New Guinea story, which really happened.
Yes.
It's wonderful. A tribe in middle of 19th century,
Yes.
a group of explorers visited a tribe in the middle of the island, and they learned that they have some horrible ritual death dance with terrifying masks. And they arrived to this tribe in the evening through some interpreter. They explained to them that they want to see this dance. And next morning, yes, the tribe performed this dance for them. And they left writing anthropological report. Blah. You know what happened 10, 20 years later? Another group, a little bit more intelligent, came there and learned the true story. There was no death dance. They were simply good hosts, hospitality. They somehow understood that the white people want to see some terrifying dance. And all the night they worked on it and performed it. This is how we should treat traditions and all that, and so on and so on. And here, humor helps in the sense of, not in the sense of making fun of the primitives, but to see how they can be, in some sense, more modern than we are.
Right, right.
I think even with, no, I don't sympathize with them, but how people don't see that ISIS, Islamic State, okay, their ideology is a patch-up of old slogans, but their organization is ultra-modern, even post-modern.
Yes.
This is like a very well-organized gang, absolutely nothing traditional about
Tell
it.
us about it. Tell us about how they get their message out also, and how they also use comedy in their sort of message
That's what really makes me sad. That's the problem for me with political correctness. Although I totally support their goals.
Of course. Yes.
Absolutely. And I mean it seriously.
Yes.
Like, I am now horrified with all those actors who did what they did and so on.
Yes.
But there is a problem that if you apply political correctness in this literal sense of killing all irony, then not only, I think, at a deeper level, you just reproduce racism, because you don't really get rid of it, you just control it, but again, you open the space to the other side to use it. When I was young and you years ago, right-wingers were these puffed-up, dignified boys, and it was the strategy of the left to be a little bit provocative, dirty, and so on. Now it's almost the opposite.
How did that happen?
I think, I don't have a big socio-psychological theory, but I think...
I'm surprised, by the way, that you don't.
No, I have limits. But I think it has something to do with this cultural turn of the left. It began already in 80s later, when the left de facto admitted that they don't have an alternative. So the strategy was then moralization. We don't deal so much with economy and so on, legal problems. We culturalize politics.
Yes.
And they become this kind of neo-Puritans, you know.
Yes.
And also, it's in a way an obscene enjoyment. For example, I noticed how some of my politically correct friends, what pleasure this gives to you. Like, you know, you always suspect, am I already out of racism? But what if even, like, I replace this word with that one? But what if even in this case there is still a trace of racism? And what I'm almost always saying is that a truly non-racist society wouldn't be the one where you would not use dirty words, but the one in which dirty words, obscene humor, could be used without functioning in a racist way.
Right.
And it can be done. I had a wonderful, I will not mention his name, it may hurt him, me, but with a big name.
Okay.
Black thinker, activist.
Okay.
We had a debate, and he liked what I said so much that he told me, you are now my friend, brother, you can call me nigger. Now, wait a minute. This was a very refined note. Why? It was not only a sign of true solidarity, but it was also, you know, a wonderful use of what I call an offer meant to be rejected. If I were really to say, okay, fuck off, nigger, he would be fully justified in being mad at me.
Yeah.
The function of this, it was not a real call to me to call him nigger. It was just a signal that I was not expected to follow, a signal of using it, a signal of true proximity, that he accepts me. And at this level, I'm often an idiot that I take this type of statements too literally. I remember my first visit to New York 30, 40 years ago. I wasn't used to it. You have here, I don't know if you still have it at that point, in all these lower Manhattan cafeterias for old hippies and so on, the waiter brings you free water and they ask you, how are you today? I didn't know this is a rhetorical question. So I started, I feel pretty bad, bumpy flight, turbulences. And he looked at me as if I'm a complete idiot. It was a pure comical moment, you know.
Right,
so
great.
what I'm saying is that I don't think that, in this sense, maybe this is me as a neoconservative, I don't think that rituals are always bad. Rituals also bring freedom. Look, let's say we don't yet know each other, we meet.
Okay.
And we have these phrases, how are you today? If we are not real friends.
Right.
And if I ask you, how are you today? We probably both know that, that this is not meant literally, and that I'm even probably not really interested in it. Because if you discover that I'm really interested in it, you would have the full right to tell me, sorry, it's none of your business how I feel. So I find this so fascinating how this is what I call sincere lie. We all, for example, we stumble one upon the other on a street and I greet you, nice to see you.
Right.
We both suspect that what I'm really thinking is, why didn't I notice this idiot half a minute before so I would be able to cross to the other side of the street?
Well, I think the next time I see you, I'm going to just say mother.
That would be wonderful. Yeah.
And you can say sister, and then
we are true friends.
we're
No,
here,
but what I want to say is that although we both know it's a lie, but as such it does its function. So what I mean through all these examples is that, it will be a radical thesis, I don't think that because these gaps like this call for a comical reading, either you take it too literally or whatever, and you know who was aware of this false identification? One of the classic Alfred Hitchcock's plots, like in North by Northway.
Okay.
But this, all of us are like, you know Roger or Thornhill? Yeah. Your identity is determined totally from outside.
Yes.
This is why it's not a tragic movie. Because in a tragic movie, your identity is your fate. You do something wrong, you pay the price for your hubris, whatever. But the Hitchcockian plot is a comical one. It can be very tragic, but it's pure comic identification. Because there is no deeper connection between the real Roger Thornhill and George Kaplan. Now, what is it? They're identified as in North by Northwest.
Right.
You're just by total contingency, you find yourself at a certain place. And I think even for anti-Semitism, it works like this. You know, in my country, we have a standard, not anti-Semitic, but pro-Semitic, basically, jokes that one guy says to the other, Jews and cyclists are guilty of all our troubles. And the automatic answer of another is, why cyclists? You know? For Jews, we know, and so on. No? So again, I think that we should accept that language at a zero level is a comical instrument. It's not an instrument of deeper truth.
Right.
Even good cognitivists like Daniel Dennett make this point clear, that language was invented much more important than all those pseudo-Marxist topics. We work collectively and we have to exchange information. No. It's basically for seduction and lying, creating false impressions and so on. In language, we also have the basic lesson of psychoanalysis is always that the identity conferred on you by language is by definition a false identity. That's why for psychoanalysis, hysteria is the truly subversive position, not perversion.
Okay.
The hysterical question is, as Lacan put it nicely, why am I what you are telling me that I am? That's why women are, and that's a good thing, more hysterics. A woman is identified with you are mother, sister, slave, whatever, a certain position.
Yes.
And the hysterical question is, but why am I what you are saying that I am? And here again, hysterical comedy enters and so on, in contrast to perversion,
right.
which I think is not comical. Perverts are boring people.
Right.
You know, hysterical people ask questions. Perverts don't have a doubt. Perverts know what they want and so on. That's why they are horrible, much more difficult to treat. And the great achievement of psychoanalysis against the spirit of 68, where unfortunately the main tendency was to dismiss hysteria as half-here, like hysterics just provoke the master, they really want a master, perverts go to the end. No, perverts are always the dark side of power. Every dignified power edifice needs a pervert secretly to sustain it. No?
Have you ever heard of a Czech movie called The Joke? There's a Czech movie from the 60s. I think
know
68.
but you know that it's made from, it's based on the first one,
book, yes.
which is incidentally, I think, much better than his Unbearable Lightness and so on. It's maybe his best. I even saw it recently, because I bought at some sales, they are now disappearing in London for £2, cassette of 4 great, those Prague Spring movies and so on, you know. And what I like is this. Is it in the movie or also in the novel? I think they cut it out from the movie. At the novel, his ex-mistress who reported on him at the end wants to kill herself, but she takes the wrong pills for, how do you call it, to
shit.
To shit, yes. And this comical term, it doesn't make the situation less desperate, but it's crucial. I think, again, it's not a strategy of comedy, it's the strategy of true despair.
Right.
Not to go to the end into a tragedy, but to give to the tragedy a comical twist, you know.
Yeah. Now, one of my favorite aphorisms of yours is resistance is surrender. And we've sort of been talking about...
No, it was too radical there, but what I still mean is that
and
a certain kind of resistance just plays the game, and so that I call it, following my good friend, Austrian philosopher Robert Thaler, that resistance can be co-opted as what in boxing they call clinching, you know. When you are dangerously hitting me, I embrace you.
Yes.
And often, you know, it's always, okay, let's talk and so on. And then, I mean, like, in the last 10 years of Yugoslav communism, communists were doing it all the time. It was a wonderful, it's a great comic detail. Somewhere from early 80s, at least in Slovenia, no way you could write whatever you wanted, no way to be arrested. So one friend of mine, it's a wonderful comical story, was worried, like he wanted a badge of honor. I was in prison for 1 month, whatever, and he worried. So he wrote a terrible attack on party, even published in some journal. Like the attack said, like, you are worse than Stalin is, this is the most corrupt. And he got an invitation for the Central Committee. Comment, it's interesting what you're... Okay, he went there, attacked them even more. Will they arrest me now? No. They told him, it's so nice that we talk, it's wonderful that you came, you see, we should talk more. Sometimes the thing to do is to, not to be violent, but to refuse the dialogue. Silence can be often more threatening.
Yes.
You know, that's all I meant, that this type of, and unfortunately it goes for a lot of political correctness or this cultural left, that, you know what, I was almost lynched when I took note of this, that how LGBT plus, with all the hell they are raising, as if they are most subversive, but I'm sorry, all the big business stands behind them. Name them, Zuckerberg, Tim Cook, and so on. And I was shocked. Zuckerberg gave, some 2 months ago, maybe you saw it in the media, a talk at Princeton, where he says, our goal is to bring people, provide to people a purpose in life. And I said, my God, look, the guy who created Facebook, which is the most expanded without any purpose activity in the world, you know. This is another thing that should be investigated. This new type of, I wouldn't call them public intellectuals, but public figures of wisdom, this new, you know, Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook, Zuckerberg, I'm almost more afraid of them than of people like Steve Bannon, who is much more interesting. Oh, he's horrible, don't avoid. But did you read what he recently said? He ferociously attacked Trump's tax plan. He said, no, for the rich people, we should raise this to 45% taxes. And this is the sadder thing. The alt-right is taking from us irony. Even, it's a comical reversal, even today, only the right in power, almost proto-fascist right, can still risk to do some good old welfare social measures. Look at Poland. I had this example. They have now this order and justice, law and justice, ultra-conservative power, the Kaczynski guy, the surviving brother. You know what they enacted a year ago? Incredible reforms. They lowered the retirement age. They raised pension, what you get. They better student loans, better health care for all. What no leftist dares to do today. And on the opposite side, this is the sad lesson from Greece. And it was a great wisdom of Europe to allow Syriza to stay in power. Right. The only, if you have to do tough austerity, you should put pressure on the left to do it.
Right.
Because imagine that now the right would have been in power in Greece. Syriza would have organized demonstrations all the time. Now the result is perfect. Radical demoralization and so on, depolitization and so on, you know. This is, and another thing brings us to our topic. I've written, I don't know where about it recently, and it's not just the good irony, but this use of obscenity in a anti-emancipatory, whatever we call it, conservative way. I was shocked to discover that friends send me documents. It's all true. You can even check it on the web. The same Kaczynski brother, staunch, conservative, moral majority. You know what he did a couple of years ago when his party won the election? The journalist of the biggest daily newspaper, and then this was repeated on TV, he stood by it, asked him, what's your program now? What do you want to do? And he said, don't worry about program. Then he used an extremely obscene expression. In Polish, teraz kurwa mi, which means now it's my turn to fuck the whore. It's a vulgar expression from the military, you know, when there is a prostitute and soldiers wait in line, and then, okay, you fucked her, now it's my turn to do it. Now, is this interesting? It tells you a lot about this alt-right neocon identity. I don't think this is any subversive undermining. Neoconservatives are structured precisely like that. Which is why I don't see any contradiction in the fact that that conservatives still more or less support Trump, knowing that he's an obscene guy and so on. They identify with him precisely because of that, and the left is liberal left. It's so stupid they didn't see it. You know where I'm against humor? In the sense of it just strengthens the system. Okay, I watch them, I love them, but Jon Stewart and now John Oliver. I'm a little bit tired of this endless making fun of Trump. On, and at the end he will be re-elected.
Well, and does it normalize him? I mean, by making fun of him, is it...
That's what,
Is the satire toothless ultimately? Because it sort of encourages the...
But the problem is that this satire, I'm not saying we should take him seriously, but the catch is that first we should take his politics seriously. He knows, he's not just a clown, he knows what he's doing. And you know what's, for me, comical interlude, the true problem. Look, Trump is nightmare, but at least he has, okay, I wouldn't call it a human side, but inconsistencies. But I think we all who still care for freedom should pray to God that Trump is not impeached, because then we get Mike Pence, who is worse.
Much worse.
Much worse.
Yes.
He truly is the conservative.
He's what people are afraid Trump is.
Yes. So again, my idea would be that this is why today ideology is so efficient, because you cannot undermine it through irony, sarcasm. It's doing that job better than ourselves.
Wow.
My God.
Yes. So that shift, that when the left wing was tweaking the right wing, you had Nixon in power, but eventually they incorporated the left wing, the counterculture, into the culture.
I think that based on this, I don't always agree with. Far from it, he's too naive, manipulated by Putin, Oliver Stone.
Right.
But did you see his Nixon movie?
Yes.
It's very interesting. He half rehabilitates Nixon. And I think, look, if you look from today retroactively, my leftist friends told me, look, he did peace with China.
Yes.
If you look at social spending for students' healthcare, Nixon, because already Carter had to reduce and so on, Nixon was most social-oriented welfare president. I think it's unfair, he was the last tragic president.
Yes.
Afterwards, it was this Teflon presidency, Reagan, who already introduced this comical self-distance in a bad way. I remember, I couldn't believe it. Once, a journalist asked in one of the few, then he stopped, free press conferences, Reagan about some point, and Reagan simply said, why are you asking me this? You know that I'm too stupid to answer you now. You know where self-depreciation is part of the way. And here I'm almost for standard dignity. My God, sorry, president is not there to make bad taste jokes.
Yes.
President should stand for some kind of dignity. And so
well, he was also dismissed before he became president as a comical buffoon. He was in the Bedtime for Bonzo movies with the chimp. He was not taken seriously, and kind of in the same way as Trump, he was sort of a joke, and somehow that joke reinforced people's desire.
That's my point. That's why although I never did that, I comically pseudo-supported Trump. My point is that the true problem is not Trump. The true problem is the deep disorientation of the Democratic Party.
Yes.
That's why they are... I'm no fan of Putin. Probably they did mess with the elections, but in the same way that United States are messing
with everything. Yes, right.
But my point is that nonetheless, it's clear that this was not the ultimate reason. The ultimate reason was how Hillary and her wing brutally got rid of Bernie Sanders and manipulated, and nobody is asking. Now it's like blame the Jews. No, Putin is now the Jew, instead of asking the self-critical question. Such an obvious idiot like Trump. How could we have lost against this guy? Oh, it's an easy answer, blame the Russians, we don't have to change, and so on.
Right.
I'm not a naive guy, even first. Sanders has his limitations, and so. But what is welcome with him is that he's simply returning back to these basic economic questions and so on. And I think when you asked me how did we end up with this irony and so on, I think the problem was this: even fight against racism was culturalized. In what sense? Did you notice how today, when the topic of racism, race, is automatically translated into the topic of tolerance?
Right.
Are we harassed? Do we tolerate the other? But sorry, make a simple test, which I did. Download Martin Luther King's writing speeches. He never talks about tolerance and so on. It would be ridiculous for him to say, what, we blacks want to be more tolerated or what. This is how, instead of asking radical economic and so on questions, if I am a racist towards you, all of a sudden the problem is, why don't I tolerate you? And what problems do I have? So it's a kind of, I should do a kind of collective psychoanalysis, my group. That's a problem, and I'm here going to the end. And even here we have ideology in everyday life today. Take, my God, smoking.
Okay.
I am opposed to smoking.
Okay.
But I find suspicious all the ideological energy invested in it. You know, the idea is it's harassing us.
Right.
But, you know, quite often in our politically correct times, harassment is itself a very suspicious term. It basically means I don't tolerate you, another human being, and a human being means a desiring being with all small obscenities and so on. You shouldn't come too close to me.
Right.
So fear of harassment is in itself a form of intolerance in the sense of
censorship in a way.
yeah, don't come too close to me.
Yeah.
Keep at a distance. That's why we are today so absolutely obsessed. Like, take sexuality. Like, it happened to me. It wasn't obscene staring. I simply am myopic, and a lady, I had to look at her, and there was a visual rape.
Oh, wow.
Then with my way of talking, you can imagine how I get verbal rape, all rapes except, of course, never the real one. But what I'm saying is that isn't there a very sad picture of a human being beneath this? It's somebody who is all the time threatened, all the time under pressure, and the big task is just to keep others at a distance,
Yes,
you know?
yes.
And that's what I fear. I find clear traces in this, about this in anti-smoking. You know, what we are really, I think there is a deep lesson here that we don't really live in a consumerist society. We live in a society of controlled consumerism. Okay. Like, I always use that joke, you know, like, drink beer but without alcohol, chocolate but without sugar, sausage but without fat. We want, and in sexuality we call this safe sex. You know, no, true consumerists would be drug addicts, whatever. I'm not saying we should do this. I'm just saying
but that's true freedom. The freedom to be able to overdo it, to make a mistake. Those things.
And how false this idea of that we live in. No, we live in an extremely tightly controlled. That's why, maybe this will interest you. I understand this turn towards aggressive fundamentalism. One of my big experiences was that when Milosevic was still in power, half illegally, I was afraid even to be arrested, I visited from Slovenia, Serbia, and I have one of the encounters of my lifetime in a small cafeteria in Belgrade, where at a nearby table there were some fanatical Serb nationalists, probably ethnic murderers and so on. And I'm crazy, I got in conversation with them. And it's incredible what they told me. You know, I tried to pursue this standard leftist line, you know, that today we live in the domain of new freedom, society is changing, you have to improvise all the time, know old values, and that they are afraid of freedom. They take refuges in old values. And they gave me the answer of my lifetime. They told me, no, sorry, we are not afraid of freedoms of Western liberal society. We experience it as so tightly regulated. You cannot swear, you did this. For us, being a nationalist means freedom. I can go to Bosnia, I rape women, and so on.
That's true freedom.
Yeah, and the same goes for ISIS.
Right.
It's not just fanaticism. You are one of them, you can get slaves, they deal with drugs and so on. To understand ISIS, you absolutely have to include all this very sensual, vulgar corruption they gave to their privileged fighters and so on. You know, and again, so the problem for me is this culturalization of struggle, which is in itself, I'm not blaming those in power, I'm not paranoiac. It's the really sad thing behind all of this, and I'm saying this as still a kind of a leftist believer. Look, people always complain, Syriza betrayed the left, Chavez regime got corrupt. Okay, but what is the solution? Do we have at all a leftist vision what to do with our society, which would propose a true alternative. I claim that almost all leftists today are what we ironically call left Fukuyamaists. They accept the system the way it is, just, a little bit more gay rights, abortion, healthcare, less racism. But nobody has a serious idea, because Stalinist state socialism, it's not only that. There is a more beautiful irony there. That where communists are still in power, they turn out to be the best managers of today's capitalism. China, Communist Party is certainly doing an excellent job of regulating capitalism. So,
communism turns out to be the best system for capitalism to thrive.
Absolutely.
Yes, right.
Then standard social democracy, it no longer works. The left doesn't have a vision. So what you do in such a situation is you moralize it. Especially you moralize it in such a safe way, where you know that big business, this is even better, will be fully behind you.
It's palatable to big business.
Absolutely palatable.
Yes.
And another problem I have, I wonder what to do with this, because LGBT plus people, what got me into trouble with them is that I pointed out how, they always have these problems with classification. And even here in New York, some state authority officially composed a list of 32 sex identities, butch, double sex, asexual, triple sex, so that each of us can avoid just masculine, feminine, and pick. But what's the tragic misunderstanding here? I think that's my lesson from psychoanalysis. Sexuality itself is an enigma. Precisely, you never have a fixed identity.
Yes.
And while LGBT people criticize this fixed identity, masculine, feminine, they just want to replace it with a wider set of identities, as if I have a wider choice, I will be able to say, okay, I am this. And the true comedy begins with this plus. Like, let's be liberal and include all the... I don't think this classificatory way is the right way out.
Well,
first, also, I don't like this playful ontology. They like to say we don't have fixed identities. We just jump. Today I'm gay, tomorrow I'm bisexual.
I'll identify this way, I'll identify that.
Wait a minute. I often ask myself, did they really speak? I did with some tragic transgender people. Let's say you are bodily a man, you want to become a woman. This is not fluid identity. You know very well what you want to be, and you are ready to suffer a lot. These operations are not fun.
No.
So I think there is something terribly wrong how LGBT topic was occupied by a certain postmodern ideology of just changing identities and everything is a game. We just fluidly pass from one identity to the other. And this is absolutely crucial to see how this LGBT fluidification, whatever, and the neocon reaction are two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
But that's not popular to say today.
Right.
You get lynched.
Let me ask you, I want to go back to Trump for a second and the idea of politically incorrect or obscene humor, because do you think that he tapped into a certain id-like level of the public by being so disrespectful in his humor? He called people Pocahontas, Crooked Hillary.
Absolutely, but I don't think that it's simply. Working class interfering in high intellectual debate.
Can't take it.
Where is KGB? Put them. Discover the Trotskyist plot behind.
Yes, this is a sabotage.
No. What I'm saying is that I think that it's simply. I wouldn't call it it's an obscene superego.
Okay.
I don't think even, I always have this perverse idea that when Trump is doing that, he's not just enjoying it. In a weird sense, he feels this as a duty, I like this paradox of to enjoy, to be obscene, as some kind of a twisted duty.
Yeah.
This is one of the most insightful realizations of psychoanalysis, how enjoyment itself and all can function as an obscene duty. All my psychoanalytic friends are telling me how a typical patient today is no longer the one who has some elitist desire, I want to do sex in that dirty way, but because I have internalized some strict norms, I feel guilty. No, no, no. Typical patient today would like to enjoy but feels unable to. He feels guilty not for having illicit desires to enjoy, but not being able to enjoy. So the task of psychoanalysis today, treatment, is not so much to enable you to enjoy, but to get rid of this perverse superego dimension.
Right.
You are allowed to enjoy, but you are not obliged to enjoy.
Right.
That's our tragedy today, this superego pressure. So I think with Trump, it's more, his superego is precisely explodes in this violent obscenities. And again, we should get it, as I already said, that all his stupid obscenities, you know what would be maybe a way to hit at Trump? Maybe they did it, but the way I would have done it is to have a really good comedian, to criticize him not for disrespectful, but to criticize him as, sorry guy, you are not our competition, your jokes are not good enough.
Right.
And tell Trump's jokes and rewrite like, please, insult us or gays at least in a better way. Do it like this.
Better material.
Better material.
Yeah. Pocahontas isn't that clever.
Isn't it clever?
Right.
I mean, maybe this would have worked better.
Because it's true, there's a flood of so-called satire directed to Trump, and it seems to only have normalized him, only had to have increased his acceptance.
Said, absolutely. And again, it doesn't
that's satire backfiring, in a sense.
Yeah. So again, the point is that the left emancipatory movement should be, at the same time, paradoxically, it can be done, more serious, moralistic, and more comical in an authentic way. Because, nonetheless, this was my idea, and you find elements of this with Corbyn in United Kingdom, with Sanders here.
Yeah.
In a way, isn't Sanders the mystery of Sanders' success? Is that he was, if the term moral majority has any authentic meaning, he is much more than Trump, some kind of authentic moral majority.
Yes.
I mean, the fury of ordinary people and so on and so on. So I think the way how the right-wingers themselves are becoming dirty, obscene, gives us a chance to try to occupy that terrain. To say, sorry guys, we are the true moral majority.
Yeah.
You are the dirty, obscene transgressors. We should use this opportunity.
Yeah, I don't think the Democrats seem to have the willingness, the flexibility, the fluidity to be able to make that change. They're stuck, and that's one of the problems they're going to have with Trump.
And that was my hope. Maybe I was wrong, I see.
Yeah.
I thought that Trump's victory will unstuck them.
Yes.
Doesn't look as good.
Yeah.
I know that there is now a big fight going on within the Democratic Party. Sanders and all those good, mostly women, that's wonderful. It's Elizabeth Warren, woman, Brazil, whatever, Donna Brazil.
Donna
but unfortunately, from what my KGB network spies are telling me, they are losing, unfortunately.
Yes.
The establishment, Hillary, Nancy Pelosi.
They're still
Nancy
controlling
Pelosi,
things.
I was horrified. Half a year ago, she renormalized Trump. She said, don't lose nerves. Trump, we had 8 years of Reagan, 8 years of Bush, now we had 8 years of Trump. No, sorry, Trump is a more radical change. The whole public, the whole space of public discourse changed into obscenity.
Yes.
So again, here we leftists should be more moralists. For example, to provoke my friends, I often argue for dogmaticism. In the simple sense of, for example, I wouldn't like to live in a society where you have to argue all the time that rape is bad.
Right.
I would like to live in a society where this is automatically, dogmatically accepted. So when you get a guy who starts to argue, oh, but maybe women enjoy it and so on, ask for it, you don't have to, you just laugh, sorry, you're a jerk, you're an idiot,
Yeah.
And here we are regressing. 20, 30 years ago, torture was unmentionable.
Right.
Okay, we were all states, I mean, not us doing it, but it was unmentionable. Now, the most horrible thing is that even those who are against torture silently accepted it as a topic.
Yes. Yes.
And that's for me the true, I'm not afraid to say this, moral decay.
Well, maybe there's a reverse to that also, because I was talking to Trevor Noah yesterday, and he brought up the point that people in this society, the American society, have never talked so much about sexual harassment, about ethics in government, about democracy. Since Trump has been in office, those subjects now are on everybody's mind. Maybe in the long run, it'll have
Let's hope, because the problem, I almost more fear that it will just, especially since under Trump, it's horrible, I cross myself for saying it, economy is not doing too bad.
Right.
So it's quite possible that it will just serve this renormalization of Trump in a...
Yes.
Because, you know, imagine a typical hypocritical left liberal. You have a government whom you can fully despise, at the same time you are not doing so bad economically.
Right, that is
and
the
they
irony,
like to be opposition, that's the ideal.
Yes.
That's the ideal.
Right, I could be against the tax cuts and yet they will benefit me, actually. You know, that's the irony too. You know, people who are actually against, who are for many of these liberal policies don't really benefit from them at all, but they benefit from the opposite.
But here I almost admire Trump, because it's now more or less proven that only the rich will profit. Even middle classes will lose.
Yes.
And he still, maybe he,
the public still supports it.
Yeah, almost. I'm almost beginning to think, but maybe he is a secret genius. He knows how to, you know, we normal people, we made one mistake. We still take argumentation seriously. So when we lie, we manipulate a little bit, we lie with a guilt feeling. We should learn from those guys. True lie is I look you into the eye and just repeat it.
Yes.
And when you prove me with data that I'm wrong, you say something like, oh, now you are diverting the debate to minor causes, you are avoiding the key issue, you have all these empty rhetorical...
Yes. Well, what do you think about that idea that Trump is using... I talked to somebody who was talking about the idea that Trump was a fan of Norman Vincent Peale and positive thinking, and so that while people are complaining about things that he said about the past, he's already describing the future. He's creating a future for the people that are sort of in his trance, while the rest of us are complaining about something he's already done, that's already happened.
That's a very good analysis. I think Trump maybe even half consciously plays this game.
Yes.
He's a master of diverting. Maybe even all his obscenities serve precisely like, you guys make fun of me with my obscenities and let me to do secretly the real business of tax cuts.
It seems like we get distracted very easily, and then his agenda gets played out. You know.
It's sad. Yes.
Talk to me, if you would. Can comedy be revolutionary? Are there situations where comedy can be? Because we're talking about comedy kind of in some ways satire, sort of confirming the power structure rather than breaking it down.
You caught me here because although intuitively I see clearly this distinction between, let's call it, establishment use of comedy and the, I would use maybe the Big Bird Revolution, but emancipatory, pointing towards change use of comedy. I think it can, but it depends on the presuppositions of comedy, to what type of politics, and I don't mean just content it is attached. A certain comedy can be, where for example, the model of Middle European comedy, Jaroslav Hasek, The Good Soldier, Švejk.
Okay.
Usually people take this as the ultimate, this conformist comedy of, oh, life is a joke, but I like Hasek. You know, just a couple of years before he wrote Švejk, you know what was he? In Russian Civil War, Politcommissar of a whole division in Siberia. He was radical there. So I think that there is, if you, we can learn one thing from Charles Dickens well.
Okay.
I appreciate Dickens. He had his dark side in anti-Semitism. How you can combine a spirit of satire comedy with extremely serious moral commitment. It can be done.
Yes.
Where I disagree with comedy is that when it turns into a kind of a deep life wisdom, you
Right,
know, oh,
right.
don't take things seriously,
Right.
it's just a joke, and so on. I think the most conformist thing is to play this game of politics is a horse, don't care about it, don't get caught into it, and so on and so on. My idea would be to unify the most ruthless irony comedy with the most even fanatical committed
Right.
politics.
Well, that's something I wanted to ask you. How, like the relationship between violence and comedy. I mean, does the violence somehow make that comedy more powerful? Is there?
It depends on what you mean by violence. I got, as you maybe know, into many troubles with
Right,
this.
right,
No,
yes.
but my point is a very simple one. My point is that when we talk about violence, we should avoid the trap of simply narrowing violence to violence of changing things.
Yes.
What about the violence which has to go on all the time just to keep things running the way they are?
Right.
That's the first step for
Yes,
me. What
yes.
about the violence which is going on all the
Right. The
time?
mundane, everyday violence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second thing, if I try to rehabilitate violence in some sense, it's more, as I always emphasize, violence of not doing things. In the sense of when you are expecting to do something, if you just stay back and don't participate, it can be extremely violent, but in a good sense.
Yeah.
For example, I quote it precisely in that violence book of mine, that Saramago novel, the wonderful one, you know, where
Yeah.
people refuse to vote. The whole system is in a panic, emergency state, and so on and so on. We should, and it's not the Gandhian violence, which is non-violence.
Yes.
Okay, or maybe they are connected. I think that my model of violence is what Gandhi called non-violence. And once it shocked the people in India. I claim I like Gandhi, although not totally, it's another story. Gandhi was for castes, he played another game.
yes.
But his non-violence, okay, my shocking statement was that the problem with Hitler is that he wasn't violent enough. Gandhi was more violent than Hitler. Then told, are you crazy or what? My Jewish friend told me, are you telling me they should kill all of us more? No, I told them, Hitler's violence was in Nietzsche's sense a reactive violence. It was a violence to basically save the system the way it is. It was a violence to prevent change, to keep things going on.
Right.
While Gandhi, with his non-violence, his aim was a very brutal one, to undermine the basic functioning of the British system.
Yes.
And I think the art of politics would have been this one, to engage in this type of violence where it's not blood, it's just you really hit the system.
Yeah. Yes.
That would be my type of violence. And back to humor, I think we should admit it in a way. Of course humor is violent.
Yes.
And also I will go even a step further. Sexuality is immanently humorous.
Right.
I mean, there is something at all levels, like the British joke, it's a very primitive one, but it says something truthful. You know that a classical, upper class, that a guy, how do you call this when in the army they make you push-ups?
Yeah, push-up.
Yeah, a lord is practicing push-ups, and the butler approaches him and said, his lordship maybe didn't notice that the lady already left. I mean, there is something absolutely nonsensical in all this love parade and so on in sexuality, and at the same time violent. You know in what sense? I read a very good feminist analysis of all these politically correct rules, a critical feminist analysis of this most radical political correctness, where it's again, don't be violent, don't harass me. And she, the lady, came to a paradoxical result that in this sense, the only totally politically correct sex would have been the most contractual one. we write a kind of a consensual agreement, this, that, and so on.
Contract.
Contract, yes. Contractual sex is then, in a way, the only one in...
Because it's a clean transaction.
Yeah,
There's
it's transaction, yes. Otherwise, isn't it that every sex is violent first, that before you pass to the act, you have this game of innuendos and so on, where, of course, if you feel offended, you can claim it's harassment. But it is harassment. If I want to seduce a lady, or whomever, I'm proposing something which is extremely intrusive, I mean. So this is the, and then I claim there is no way out here. You know, when you do then we have these implicit innuendos that somebody, usually in our societies, men, but also women can do it, and here somebody then must make a pass, in the sense of you openly do a gesture which means you want it. But this is a mysterious moment of ambiguity, because the attacked side, if the answer is no, he or she can always claim it was a brutal intrusion, because it is a brutal intrusion.
Yeah.
The only fair thing for me is absolutely to admit that you can in no way clearly separate in sex this violent, politically correct seduction, consensual, from the violent. At some psychic level, violence is part of the game. Sex is a violent intrusion, and not in spite of its pleasure. There is an intricate way how this violent part is even conditioning its most It's
a component. It's a component of the sexuality.
Also, another thing, maybe it will amuse you. I also have a problem here with this idea of women are objectivized. But all the women I've met, not slept with, much less, I'm strangely conservative here, but told me the same thing. But one of the pleasures of sex is that precisely you know you are just reduced to an instrument. You enjoy it, he enjoys it. You get rid of all that gentle psychological bullshit. And the point is that in a way...
You kind of lose your identity.
Yeah, and it's kind of a liberating experience. Yes. It doesn't reduce you to... It reduces you to an object, but while you retain fully your subjective freedom and so on, you know, even in hardcore pornography, once they almost lynched me, but then I convinced them in some talk. When I developed this idea, a year ago, I quickly went through some short hardcore. I tried to identify, let's call it, the basic figure of heterosexual hardcore. Okay. And I think I found it. A woman lies on her back with, I'm sorry for the obscenity, with her legs spread. The man is penetrating her, but now comes the crucial part. You must have noticed how in hardcore, woman is allowed to do the Lucille Ball thing, allowed to look into the camera, of course, to express, but so the scene is this one. Man, you see in close-up vagina penetration, and man doesn't matter. He's the truly objectified one.
Right, okay.
I found a couple of movies where they don't even show his face. He said to do this bam, who cares? But the scene is this one, like, so man, and then camera there, so that between her thighs, you see her face and all the expressions.
Yes.
Woman, is not an object. You as a viewer, you don't identify with the man doing it. You are a pure observer. You look for a proof that woman enjoys you. Woman if anything, woman is subjectivized there.
Right.
Now, I know this is a subjectivization which is not, it's even more humiliating than being an object. But it complicates things, how way too simplistic this simple idea is women are objectivized. Yes. No, if in hardcore you are subjectivized in this violent way where you have to convince the man, you look for this is why again, it's the woman who looks into the camera, addressing you with the message, I am enjoying it, and so on and so on. So this already shows first how comical sex is never pure passion. You have to have this comical spectacle aspect and so on. Because this, of course, introduces Lucille Ball comedy. And so first how true love, even passion, it's always this minimally triple structure. The lesson of psychoanalysis is not we always think about sex, like every has sexual meaning. It's a much more intelligent insight. The problem is not why do we always think about sex, whatever we are doing. It's but what are we thinking when we are doing it? There you get fantasy, which even doesn't have to be sexual, a comical detail. You know Ludwig Wittgenstein, the philosopher. You know, already 20 years ago, a friend of mine discovered in Austria, published his wartime diaries. And writing everything there, he reported how many times he masturbated in the trenches, World War I. And he also describes his fantasies during masturbation. They were not gay, although he was gay. They were rather debates with philosophers about problems of mathematics. And that's absolutely crucial.
That sounds like a Woody Allen bit.
Yeah. That's for me, of everybody knows this, the nicest. I am not a mega Woody Allen fan, but two things I like. First, he's typical, especially from Diane Keaton movies, this. After sex, you have this, I almost call it Stalinist self-criticism. But did you do this? Was I good there? And so on. And another very deep one, this is the comedy of sex, is you saw his Everything You Wanted to Know, blah, blah.
Sure.
The last one from the inside.
Yes.
How they treat it almost a kind of a Stalinist production unit. Orders down, workers there, one push more.
It was
boys.
like modern times, but inside his body, yes.
The other wonderful example here is, did you see Monty Python, The Meaning of Life?
Sure.
That central episode, sexual education.
Right.
And that's what I mean by superego. You know, teacher comes, hey, you, 3 times to arouse vagina. I don't know. What were you doing yesterday evening instead of practicing this and so on? There is such a deep insight into this pure super-egoization, you know, of. And this is absolutely crucial to get in sexuality. That sexuality, it's a total fake, this romantic idea, pure passion. Without an element of comedy, sexuality doesn't function. Seduction is an element of comedy. It's never this pure passion, me and you, or whatever.
Yes. You mentioned Meaning of Life. You mentioned Annie Hall. You mentioned some of those movies. First of all, do you think there is a perfect comedy movie, and also
I already mentioned it. I'm here very traditional. If you ask me, I'm split between to be or not to be. And maybe I would nonetheless opt for Trouble in Paradise.
Right. And do you?
Although there are wonderful elements of sexual comics, I often 2-3 times mention this in my books. Did you see? It's not a very good movie. An earlier, how is it called? My God, who played the young? In Star Wars in the second part, Ewan McGregor. McGregor.
Yes.
Did you see a movie by him, British, modest, working class, not even comedy, serious drama, Brushed Off?
Never saw.
About miners and so on.
No.
Okay. There you learn everything about comedy and sexuality. He's a striking miner, gets entangled with a girl who works turns out to be a good one for the company which wants to close down the mine, and there is a seduction game, then it's something wonderful. They had a date, then he accompanies her to her house, and in front of the house, he is very decent, she tells him, would you like to come up for a coffee? He says, would love to, but I don't drink coffee. You know what she answers? No problem, I don't have any. It's so wonderful because it's just an empty gesture.
Yes.
But through this nothing dirty can you imagine a more direct sexual invitation, you know?
Yes.
This is what we have to learn.
Yes, yes.
This is the ultimate it's none of this consensual sex with time. Just, I offer you something and then I say, it doesn't
exist.
It doesn't
but
exist.
But the true meaning of the offer is
but
revealed.
It's done in such a wonderful way.
Yes,
no?
yes.
And it's also very feminist because it's the woman who does it.
Yes.
You cannot accuse him.
Right.
No?
It would be totally different if the man had said that.
Another, maybe you heard it, ultimate Hegelian joke for
Okay.
me. It has the same structure, comical. It's maybe the best joke, although it's a traditional one from, sorry, from Lubitsch. You saw Ninochka.
Yeah.
Okay, did you notice the nice detail? You know who plays her commissar who sends her abroad?
I can't remember his name.
Bela Lugosi.
Oh, right.
Bela Lugosi. Ingenious. Yeah. But you know this famous joke there when he tries to amuse her, the actor, I forgot his name, and tells this joke. It's a simple classic, but that, you know, a guy goes to a cafeteria and asks, can I get coffee with cream, please? Without cream? And the waiter tells him, sorry, we don't have any cream. We only have milk, so I cannot give you without cream, only without milk. I claim all Hegel is in this. This is what Hegel calls determinate negation. Okay. Although it's the same coffee, materially, but coffee without cream, it's not the same as coffee without milk. Now, this brings me back to Soviet times. You know that in Poland, they told me, this was a classic political joke from those times. Because, you know, you never had everything in the stores.
Yes.
And the customer comes in a Warsaw store and says, did you already get butter? And they tell him, sorry, you are in the wrong store. We are a store which doesn't have wash powder. The store across the street is the one which doesn't have butter and so on, you know.
Yeah.
So again, something like this is the essence of sexuality, of innuendos, that you know. A gesture can be just a gesture, it can be not this, it can be not that. Another, I quoted them in one of my other books. Comedy is always the final line of a joke. This is why Kierkegaard is right. Christianity is immanently a comic religion. Not in this vulgar Dante sense, comedy, it ends well as opposite to tragedy, but in the sense of this falling into, as it were, your own image. Maybe you heard it. My favorite, there are a couple of Soviet jokes. One off. It has this Christian moment of the figure out falls into it. You know, in Lubyanka prison, mid-30s, 3 prisoners meet in a cell. Each says, why? The first prisoner says, I got 5 years for attacking Popov, high functionary. The second one says, but then the party line changed, and I got 10 years for defending Popov. You know what the third one says? I'm here for life, and I am Popov. You know, like he falls into... And
that's a great joke.
But you know that in East Germany, they had the same structure of a joke with God. And it's the deepest Christian joke that I heard. It's that... it's from those times, you know, Brezhnev, Nixon, Honecker in East Germany.
Yes.
East German boss, no? Okay, they all confront God and ask him the same question. No? First, Nixon, what will be of my beloved United States 50 years from now? God says, it will be a Soviet colony. No? Nixon, it's important, turns around and starts to cry. Then Brezhnev, what will be, it will be a Chinese province, no? Okay, Brezhnev turns around, starts to cry. Then Honecker asks, what will be my beloved German Democratic Republic 50 years from now? You can guess it. God turns around and starts to cry. But you know what's the Christian? How you think you are outside, but the agent itself falls into it.
Yes.
And so that's why I think that I'm not kidding. I'm not intelligent enough, but it would have been wonderful to do an intricate analysis of why. Maybe it was just Middle Europe, I don't know. Because I still think this is the Freudian legacy. Middle Europe, Czech Republic, Poland, East Germany. they were the top in these political jokes.
Yeah.
You know, and it is as if this Kafkaesque specific sensitivity. When this mix communism, you get the best explosive combination.
Yeah.
That, and I think that Lenin knew it. Lenin, I'm not just celebrating Lenin, he did many things.
Yes.
But I was so, you know what people don't draw attention to enough? How Lenin was obsessed with question of civility, good manners. People don't remember, you know, that famous, overrated statement, so-called testament, Comrade Stalin should be deposed. But you know what he gives as a reason there? Not wrong politics, but Comrade Stalin is not kind and polite enough, and so on. Lenin's big obsession, he then even proposed, he saw that Central Committee has a lot of power.
Yes.
And his problem was how to counteract him. And then he proposed some control commission voted directly by party members, which would not be simply a higher committee, but something that would criticize Central Committee through irony, jokes, and so on. This is Lenin at his best, a totally crazy idea that to have a regime functioning, the top power should be redoubled by a comic agency.
Right.
And it was not, this would be good humor, you know why? Because there already was enough humor in Central Committee, but this was the brutal Stalinist humor directed at those beneath.
Right.
But I like this idea of the comical double of power, you know?
Yes.
So again, I don't buy this story, unfortunately, of some of my Trotskyite friends, you know, like if only Lenin were to survive for 3 years, he would have made a pact with Trotsky and then deposed, and then what? We would have a thriving democracy. But when he was really desperate, Lenin, the last 2 years of his life, when he saw how he screwed it up, it's interesting where his mind went. Not some boring objective analysis, but comedy and politeness.
Right.
Simple, good manners.
Yes.
This is what is missing there.
So who yes.
Battery and cards need to change.
All right, so we'll take a break for a minute while they change. But that's generally the way it works. So our conversation, you have referenced all kind from Lubitsch stuff
You can do
to
it, or
Monty
what?
Python, and we could use all those to sort of illustrate your points.
You can.
Yes.
You can.
And that'll give a pace to the interview as well, the way it does in the Sophie Fiennes movies. You'll talk, you're on the set of Batman, whatever it is, but they're cutting to all these different things as well. Those
now
movies
we
are
don't
great,
have the
by the way.
energy to do the third part.
What's the third part?
We will. No, it's very boring. I wanted to do something much more eccentric, but then everybody is afraid. One idea was a very modest one, to do Pervert's Guide to Opera and follow this line, Mozart, Wagner, and so on. They claim, oh, commercial, it's not enough commercial. Then I want to do Pervert's Guide to God.
That's a great one. How can you not do that?
So we will do now something extremely boring, like Pervert's Guide to 21st Century.
Oh,
like
I see. Yeah, very generic. Yes.
Yeah.
Pervert's Guide to God is a great idea.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And, whatever, no? But the problem, okay, the good point is that I can use all my comment stuff and so on, but the true hard worker is Sophie there.
Yes, right, of course.
She was by, I ironically call her, oh my God, who did the movies? Leni Riefenstahl.
Right.
You know, after she filmed Olympia, she spent 2 years just going through all the clips, whatever.
Yeah.
She spent then time through all my babbling and so on to put order into it. She does the work.
Yeah.
For me, it was pretty easy to do it.
But they came out great though. Both those movies are great.
Yeah, but we earned minimally because they just it was like, nonetheless it didn't earn a lot in movie theaters. It was just all those rentals and then the production costs. The company which produced this Channel 4 wanted it.
Yeah.
Do you get some percentage? If I may ask, how do you do with Curb Your Enthusiasm now? Are you just paid a flat fee, or do you get some percentage?
There's a flat fee, but because there's a union, you get the residuals, which go on for almost ever. Every time it's shown, you're paid again.
And it also, so
you
Seinfeld, when it's
Seinfeld too. You keep getting paid no matter how many times it's on. Now, eventually, it kind of gets reduced to a very, but that's 25 years later. It gets reduced. But for a long time, you just continue to get checks from all those different sources. Here, in other countries, it doesn't usually work that way.
What happens with that guy? He's not doing so well after Dictator, the Sacha Baron.
You know, it's tough for English comedians to come to the United States and have success and sustain it. Peter Sellers, Russell Brand, Sasha, they're all super talented people, but they kind of catch the fancy of the American public for a while, and if they can't, Ricky Gervais, there's Steve Coogan, there's a lot of great English comedians, but they catch the fancy for a while, and then the taste shifts
It's
again.
so stupid of me. I should have, but when I first saw him in Borat and so on, I mean, I must say I'm stupid. I wouldn't have guessed that he is British.
Right, isn't that interesting? Yeah. No, he's British, but he's an immersive actor. In my opinion, he should have been nominated for an Academy Award because he's doing a role, he's doing acting with real people who were not realizing that he's
was
acting.
it really that Borat was so? Where were you in trouble? I read in that rodeo or whatever.
Yes, well,
There
all kinds of places we got into trouble. We got into everywhere we went. We had probably about 50. We were at the Watergate Hotel and got stopped by the Secret Service. We got stopped in front of the White House. We had a lot of incidents with police. Somebody was keeping track. We had like at least 50 incidents with police, with the Secret Service, with the FBI, where we would get stopped. We would get, and he would stay in character, which was very conceptual, which was really fun. And
You mean he was?
Yes, he wouldn't reveal who he was until he absolutely had to, until we were going to get arrested. You know.
What about? Sorry.
Please, no.
No.
I want to ask you because I know we want to sort of wrap up a little bit. Do you have a favorite joke and a favorite dirty joke?
It's so difficult to nominate one favorite joke.
Yeah, I know. You can give me a couple.
Okay, I will tell you my favorite dirty joke, but it's not that you laugh a lot.
Right.
I like the structure.
Okay.
Which is, it begins dirty, I was even told from Stalinist Russia. It begins in a dirty way, but it ends up, the surprise is the total innocence.
Okay.
You know, two guys sit for a long ride in a compartment of a train wagon, and one asks the other, "Did you already fuck a dog?" The other says, "No, this is disgusting. Did you?" The first guy says, "It's disgusting, of course not. Then why did you then ask me?" "Oh, just I wanted a point to start the conversation." And so it's not a great joke, but I like this totally, you know, like, because usually you begin in an innocent way and I like this total.
That's true. It's the opposite. It's a switch.
Yes. My favorite two political would be, but I don't think it would have worked. It works in English, but it's part of this Central European tradition of you think the joke is over and then it goes one step more. There was, in communist time in ex-Yugoslavia, a Croat politician called Jure, it's Jure, Jure Bilic. Okay, the idea is this one, okay, he visits Giscard d'Estaing years ago in France, and he learns that in France to appear dignified, you must add D-E, no? It's like phone, no? And the French guy presents here, Giscard d'Estaing, and he says, "Débile, it's débile," no? And now comes the second part. Surprised, Giscard says, "Really? De facto?" He says, "No, de jure." You know, it's stupid one, but I like this. Although my favorite politically, because it's the same, I like this. I will tell you two more.
Okay, great.
One, Stalinist one that I recently discovered. I really like it. It's, maybe you know it, they debate in the Politburo in the 30s, will there be money in communism or not? And first, a right-winger, okay, Bukharin says, of course, money is needed, it's a natural way to exchange things. And then a leftist said, no, money is capitalist alienation, we will have immediate distribution, no money. And then Stalin intervenes and says, no, comrades, you have two deviations, right-wing deviation and left-wing deviation. And the truth is the dialectical synthesis of the two. There will be money and there will not be money. And somebody asks, okay, Comrade Stalin, how will this look? And Stalin says, you can guess what. Very simple. Some people will have money. It's a simple one. But again, I like this return to common sense. But my favorite for political and theoretical reasons is that the one, you must know it, I use it at the beginning of my, I think it was Welcome to the Desert of the Real. It's East German joke. The best I know. When a guy from Soviet times, for me, Germany is sent to work to Siberia as an engineer, whatever. And he says to his friends that I will write you letters, but of course, letters will be censored, checked by secret police, so everything that I will write you will not be true. So let's establish this code. If I write with normal blue ink, it means it's true. If I write it with red ink, it means I had to lie.
Okay.
Then they got the first letter, all in blue, no? And he says, the letter goes on, it's wonderful here. Ladies are nice, we have all the freedom, Western movies, we get all the commodities here. In the stores, you get everything except red ink.
That's great also,
it's very precise. Yes. I even used this one when I made that speech on Zuccotti Park, Occupy Wall Street.
Yes, yes.
I said, we need red ink today. That is to say, the problem is not simply that we are not free, but we need a more precise language to explain in what sense we are not free.
Right.
I'm always for this paradox that the first gesture of liberation is that you define yourself as a slave.
Wow, that's so interesting. Yes.
Yeah. So this type of otherwise, I must tell you. Another, maybe you know this level. Where I discovered, nonetheless, the emancipatory dimension of jokes. The same in ex-Yugoslavia. The beautiful thing before nationalism exploded in the 80s, when I was young, was that all the time in ex-Yugoslavia, each nation was identified with a certain racist cliché feature. You know, like we Slovenes were supposed to be misers.
Okay.
We don't like to spend money. Bosnians are supposed to be sex obsessed. Macedonians are supposed to be thieves. Montenegro people are supposed to be extremely lazy. and also, okay, I'm sure you've heard this one. A classic Montenegro one, I use it all the time, is this one that a Montenegro, because it's always also earthquake territory, Montenegro.
Okay.
How does a Montenegro guy masturbate?
How?
He digs a small hole in the earth, puts his penis in, and waits for the earthquake because he's even too lazy to. But the wonder was how this functioned. Whenever we meet with friends, different republics, we did not play these politically correct games. Horrible, these jokes try to reduce us to a cliché. We gladly and with pride identified with that cliché and tried to use it in as many jokes as possible, making joke of those clichés, you know.
Yes.
And it was wonderful experience, like we competed with each other, who will tell a nastier jokes against ourselves, mostly, but precisely mobilizing the cliché. For example, there is a series of there is another Montenegro joke, which you will not dare to use that one. It's problematic. It's extremely politically incorrect.
Okay.
But for my redemption, I can only tell you it was told to me by a woman.
No, it's okay.
It takes place in Pristina, Kosovo part, where you have all these United Nations international police, and a woman comes to them, again it refers to Montenegro laziness, a woman comes to a lady them and said, yesterday night I want to report a rape. I was raped by a Montenegro guy. And they okay, show us where. Okay. She takes them to a dark corridor where even the bulb exploded, darkness. Says it happened here at midnight. But how do you know that it was a Montenegro guy if you can't see anything? And she says, well, he was just laying down, I had to do all the work. You don't use this.
But still, that's funny though.
But it's typical how it was part of our Balkan ethos that I liked it, how like in Slovenia we have these traditions, like all the nice, they are now a little bit outdated, jokes against blonde ladies is stupid. No.
Right.
We had a blonde student who was specialized in collecting them and so on. No, again, what I really liked is how what may appear as brutal racism was in a wonderful way changed into a tool of solidarity.
Right.
Because I even have a negative proof of it. The proof is that when in early 80s, real, actual nationalist violence and tensions emerged, these jokes disappeared.
Oh.
Only that, so it's effective for me. One would have expected, with all those Serb, Bosnian, Croat tensions, it would have exploded even more. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. It didn't explode. It even disappeared. It was really some kind of a proof that these jokes
it illustrated their power, actually.
Yes.
They were a danger in some way.
Yeah.
A subversive. They were a subversive tool.
Not so much subversive as I would even say. Oh my God! Somebody had to go to.
That's okay. Thank you.
No, it's okay. An instrument of solidarity.
Yes.
By sharing these jokes, you established a link.
Yes.
That's why I always use this example. That there are people who are polite. That's easy. There are people who are vulgar. This is also relatively easy. Then there are people like Japanese and British who can be vulgar while maintaining their polite facade.
Yes.
They can insult you extremely, but in an extremely gentle, polite way.
You don't even know you've been insulted.
Yeah. But then I think the true art is to be polite and kind in a vulgar way. You apparently talk vulgar, but then you do and so on. And that's for me a certain function of, and this is what you don't find in this arrogant, dirty, racist political humors. They're usually just vulgar and so on.
Right.
While the true art is to use vulgarity. It can be a very dirty humor and so on, but the way it functions is really one of friendship, politeness. And when friends told me that all these liberals who worry too much, but how do you know that somebody will not be offended or whatever? No, the miracle is you do know. In a concrete situation, it's always absolutely clear is somebody offended or not. And sometimes this humorous approach works wonders. For example, I was with my friend Udi Aloni when he got a notice that his mother died. And he was totally desperate. He was very attached to his mother and so on. And she told me, not even a joke, she was Minister of Education in Rabin cabinet.
Okay.
And she visited Japan with Rabin. She had a thing there where she thought it's humor, but the joke was that it wasn't. The Japanese Minister of Education told her, "We admire Jewish people, you are wonderful, you are our model." And she asked him, "Why? What do you mean, why?" And he said, "You know what to do, a plan, and then you realize it." She asked, "Okay, well," and he said, "Protocols of Zale." He assumed that this is a real book, and he was slightly shocked to say that, no? And then I knew the guy is Udi Aloni approaching a crackdown. And I did something which was risky, but it worked. I knew it must be something obscene, crazy that will distract him, because he showed me some picture of her mother and so on, just when she was so old, and I told her, listen, fuck now, she's an ugly old lady. I want to see was she fuckable or not when she was younger. Show me some of her early pictures. And it was madness. It worked so wonderfully. No, she's fuckable here, what sounds would she make there? And I distracted him in such a nice way.
Yeah.
You know, that's the pedagogical art of obscenity. If you know to shock people in a good way,
yes,
it can definitely work. But again, my big formula is the art of using another thing you will like at this level, of using vulgarity literally as means of kindness and friendship.
Yes, yes.
You know, a wonderful thing happened to me with my son, whose best friend for years in Slovenia is a black boy. By some miracle, his mother moved to Slovenia, he lives there. And he was all the time, but as an act of extreme friendship, when he visited my son to play video games, the butt of my, you can imagine how dirty they were, tasteless jokes.
Yeah.
You know, like the first time he came, I told him, why are you so black? Do you need more soap to wash this off? Or when they were very young, practicing mathematics, all those stupid elementary first, second year extra. You take 2 apples, you cut them in 3 parts, you put together how, and he had some difficulties. And I told him, wait a minute, maybe we should make for you a different task, like there is an ape jumping from a tree for 3. It was then something so, I suspected for some time, my God, maybe that guy will be hurt really. No, then a miracle happened. Once he came to visit my son, I opened the door, and because my son was playing the video game, and I was really in a bad mood, some private trouble, so I just kindly said hi, come in to him, and withdrew. And then in 5 minutes, my son came and said, are you mad at my friend? Why didn't you insult him? He's extremely worried. Did he do something wrong?
Right.
I love this so much.
Yeah.
Well, it became to such an extent, this, and he was very good at insulting me back. At least, maybe I screwed my children with my education, but maybe I used it somewhere. You know, this joke, at least my son had my type of sarcastic humor. I'm so proud of him when, for example, when he was, it's important, you will see why, 13 years old. I was once a little bit mad at him, so I shouted at him a dirty curse in Croat, jeboti pas mater, which means, literally translated, let a dog fuck your mother.
Okay.
You know what my son instantly answered? He was 13. This already happened 14 years ago, that's how I was born. But I admired him so much, he didn't have to think 5 minutes. Instant.
Reflex.
Reflex
Yes,
instant.
nice,
Now,
nice. That's great,
Yeah.
that's
and
great.
what worries me now more seriously is that, is such a procedure still possible in politically correct times? Or do we worry all the time, would somebody be offended, no, or whatever?
And how will that change humor?
Because even in erotics, with my wife, we strictly speak this language for years. When she wanted sex, she said, listen, I need now a nice gentle rape. Would you please rape me? And so on. I mean, but I claim that you lose something very precious if you drop this obscene dimension. It can be I think that we are so cynical, or at least I am, that if you say it literally or in a direct way, I automatically take it as irony.
Right,
you know?
right, sure.
It must be wrapped up in this way as some kind of a paradox and so on, or with a dirty twist to it and so on and so on. So again, that worries me. That worries me very much.
Well, do you think that political correctness could lead to the evolution or the death of comedy at some point, when nothing is allowed to be funny?
This is a good question, because again, of course, their official party line would have been, no, there can also be a good humor and so on. Once I had a problem with this in Santa Cruz, which was already in the 80s, one of the capitals of political correctness. No? And I told a dirty joke, and they told me, no, we don't do this here. We have wonderful jokes, We have wonderful jokes, these abstract jokes, about mathematical forums and so on, which hurt nobody. And then, of course, I exploded. They almost threw me out, I said, but isn't the whole point of joke that at least you pretend that there is something dirty, somebody is hurt? And so what remains So I think that although they have this goal, they will never say, no, we are against jokes or whatever, but de facto, it does mean this, that they disappear. There is always some kind of this brutal irony, aggressivity in a joke. And again, the true miracle is not to get rid of it, but to make it serve against its own forum as a mean of, because that's for me true friendship, my God. True friendship is not that we talk kindly. A true friend is for me somebody whom I can ruthlessly insult.
Be honest.
Yeah, and then I know he will do the same to me, and so on and so on.
Yes.
Sharing
taboos also. If you share taboos.
In one of my books, I went into this of what political correctness and fundamentalism, like, it's not the only one, Muslim fundamentalism share. They share the same obsession with sexual innuendos. Where does it enter? For example, I read somebody that when Taliban were in power in Afghanistan, that they prohibited women wearing metal heels. The idea is, even if a woman is totally covered, that click sound can already excite men. Okay, my first reaction was, what a wonderful society. Everything is so eroticized.
Very fetishistic.
Yes, but isn't that with this obsession, woman totally covered and so on, this tight control of sexual innuendos, expressions, isn't this pretty similar, although with the opposite goal, pretty similar to political correctness, where also it's so tightly controlled, if you do this gesture, that gesture, and so on, I mean, I met women years ago who were extremely strong, assertive, and these were not yet politically correct times, and I remember how if somebody tried to flirt with them and they didn't want it, they didn't need any politically correct, they just looked at you with such annihilating, brutal, despising attitude that you drop that.
Right.
It can
more
be
powerful.
Yeah, more powerful.
Yeah,
I mean, it can be done. It can be done in this sense. You know what also people don't get here? This also brought me a lot of trouble, but many feminists accepted it. That, let's say, I simplify it. Let's say two women are raped. One is a self-assertive, emancipated woman. The other is the one who is weak, maybe even, why not, secretly fantasizing about being raped. Why not? People have their... My point was was of course to argue against this male chauvinist wisdom that many women just call for it. No, my point was that, and then speaking with some psychiatrists from Bosnian War, where there were many rapes, 20 years ago, they confirmed this to me. Take two ideal types, of course. Take them and ask yourself which woman would have been more traumatized. Not the self-assertive one. The one who was dreaming about... There is almost nothing more violent than to have your most intimate dreams, of which you are even ashamed to express them publicly, to have them brutally imposed on you from the outside.
Wow.
So these are And then the typical false feminist reproach was, but there are no women like that. These are only women who internalize male ideology. No, I think this is an extreme censoring attitude towards women. People have the right to fantasize the nastiest, passive victimization and so on. The point is that in no way this justifies if you enacting dreams. This is the greatest violence is to brutally enact what you most intimately dreamed from outside on you. It's this type of things which can lead to suicide.
Yeah.
An assertive woman who is raped, it may be painful, horrible, but it doesn't touch her inside.
Okay.
He will, to be vulgar, take a good shower and, I hope, take revenge of the man, but she will not be traumatized. But if you attack a woman, if you rape her, who already is weak in herself, fantasizing about it there, you can ruin everything. This again brings us back to that comedy as the third here. You know what was also the saddest thing I learned from Bosnian war experience, friends telling me that it's similar to something that Primo Levi wrote, when, let's say, a woman is gang raped, many of them who survived it told us that the most painful thing was not, okay, it was horrible, the act of rape, but the way mostly Serbs were doing it is that to do it when they kidnapped or took prisoner of the entire family, to do it in front of the girl's father. And this ruined so much the relationship because father felt incredibly guilty. My God, my girl is there raped, I cannot help her. At the same way, at a deeper level, he felt angry at the girl. Look, she now ruined my life, took my authority from me, and so on. And the interesting thing is this one. When did suicides enter? Suicides entered the scene of the rape, of victims of rape.
Yeah.
Not immediately after it happened. They survived it. This traditional cliche is even true here, I was told. They survived it by telling themselves repeatedly that I must survive to tell the truth. But then the true horror was when they, if they miraculously survive, rejoin their family, friends, and they discovered that they have nobody, there is no ideal guy to whom they can report and who will, the people are indifferent and so on. They have no big other to report to. At that point, the suicides enter. It's a very tragic story.
Where the futility sets in.
Yeah. It's the same, the crucial dream reported by Primo Levi, that once he dreamt in Auschwitz, in the middle of the night, he was dreaming that he survived the war and that he rejoined his family and that he was telling them about his wartime experience. And he noticed that they're all getting bored, fall asleep, and at that point he awakens because he was so traumatized by this horror that nobody wants to listen to it, that he preferred to awaken into the reality of Auschwitz rather than to do that. You see, it's the same as what I was telling about that woman's gaze between her legs, how the way some event is witnessed, socially mediated, it's so important.
Yes.
And again, comedy is always about this. Comedy is always, that's why, okay, there are idiots who laugh at their own jokes, but usually they always do it to save the appearance. Did you encounter such vulgar guys? I like them. Who tells a joke, and then when he notices that nobody is laughing, he laughs himself to save his face.
He's his own canned laughter.
Yeah.
When a comedian laughs at his joke, it is like it's what canned laughter is supposed to provide, like a kind of a guidepost for you to realize that what he's saying is funny.
Yeah. So again, sorry.
No, I was going to ask you, because based on that, I wanted to ask you another question, which is, in the future, we're talking about political correctness and maybe the death of humor. Will there come a time when comedy doesn't have to be funny? Will that paradox somehow exist? It'll be comic, but not actually funny anymore?
It depends what do you mean by it. There was one wonderful joke from Prisoner's Life that a group of prisoners are together for a year, and to pass time they tell jokes to each other. Maybe you've heard it, it's a European classic. And then, so they have a limited set of jokes. And then so they all know these jokes, and at the end they are too lazy to tell. Somebody says joke number 15, and everybody starts to laugh. And so maybe we will do something, develop into something like this, which will be
that's funny.
What can be another version of this canned laughter.
Yeah,
you know?
That's great.
Because you know also, again, Freud developed this nicely. This function of the third party in the joke, you know, how you depend on a witness and so on.
Yes.
This is where I see the link between joke and sexuality. This is why I always suspect that this is why sexuality implicates always some kind of exhibitionism. Even if you are alone, you imagine a gaze, even if you are not fully aware of it. We are never alone. That's the lesson of sexuality. It's never just me and my partner and so on and so on, you know.
It's sometimes me and myself. You're talking about like an outside version of ourselves, looking back at ourselves, gazing at ourselves.
Yeah, but for me, okay, now we would have to go into this psychoanalytic topic. I think that we are already split in this way. Lacan has a wonderful distinction he found in Freud, although Freud uses the terms in an indistinct way, but Lacan sensed a difference between ego ideal and ideal ego. Ideal ego is the ideal image of myself, but ideal ego, but ego ideal is the ideal point from which I want to see myself. So, you know, but this split for Lacan is constitutive of our identity. And you know, at what sense this is true? Most of the national identities are built in this way. A nation imagines how it would like to look in the eyes of foreigners. For example, one of the first classics, Aeschylus, Persians. It's celebration of Greeks, but the action takes place in Persian court. And who are Greeks, these great guys? Or I learned a wonderful detail when I was in Argentina. You know that in Argentina, their myth, these cowboys on Pampas, all these legend figures, you know that they took them from early English travelers. Their national identity is based on identifying with the foreign gaze. You know? So I think it's always this mediation through a foreign gaze. You need it. And of course here comedy enters and so on, you know, because the dream is then, it's all these comical details. Do I have a tiny place where I can be without the other looking at me? Because I think, against cheap theories of paranoia, that the true horror is not to be looked at, but not to be looked at. When you really have the... Did you see the movie, was it called? Project X or what?
I never saw it, but I know the movie.
That big orgy, you know. It tells so much about our society, I think. You know what's the idea? No? Two guys who are alone, parents left for the weekend, just put a note on Facebook, come, and what happens is that 10,000 people come, police has to intervene. Incidentally, a similar thing happened a year before in Belgium, you know. A local girl put a note on Facebook, 50,000 people came. But what's so nice in that, that's absolutely crucial in that movie, this comical aspect. At the beginning, when parents leave, they tell to their son, listen, we'll be absent, but if we want friends, maximum 5 friends. You have to stay in the living room, don't touch the swimming pool, don't touch the car. Okay, then orgy explodes, the whole house burns down, the car is ruined, and so on. But there is a wonderful detail. At the film's end, when father comes home, first he is shocked, everything ruined, and he tells to his son, listen, you will have to work hard to cover the expensive, but on the other hand, I must confess you something. I never would have thought you are able to do this. Like appreciation. And that's, I think, the authentic paternal authority, which is not simply oppressive.
Right.
It literally solicits desire and, in a way, no. And what I am afraid is that both extremes, political correctness and permissivity, want to close this gap. The problem of political correctness is that there are things which work only insofar as they are not strict rules, but implicit, ambiguous rules of politeness. Political correctness tries to legislate what doesn't function if purely legislated.
Right.
The problem is that if you have this, so this is what I tried to develop through another joke. Maybe you heard it, I use it in my early books. Why can be permissivity much more oppressive than standard paternal authority? Paternal authority, and every authority, always leaves you a kind of a place in shade. Okay, you are not allowed to do this, but if you have to do it discreetly where I don't see you. No? Do you know that you, as a Jew, you should know it. You know that in Decalogue,
Okay.
that prohibition, do not praise other gods, blah, blah.
Right.
This is not the exact translation. Every good guy who really knows the Old Testament will tell you. It says something which is much more adequately translated as, do not praise our gods in my view. In my, so,
right.
fuck you, do it there, when you are, but not. And this is how authentic authority functioned. Do it discreetly.
Right.
And a good master even incites it discreetly. Like the satisfaction of a slave is precisely that you can secretly enjoy out of the master's gaze.
Yes.
You know. And what I'm afraid is that when you get permissivity, this regulation, which are supposed to regulate this totally permissive society, get much worse, because they are not like the patriarchal rules which allow you for an opening, do it discreetly there. They really want to be rules. The example that I like use this one. You are a small boy, Sunday afternoon, or girl, your father wants you to visit some crazy old aunt. And okay, if your father is a patriarchal father, he will tell you something like, go, grandmother, behave properly there, or aunt, that's your duty. I don't care how you feel, you have to do it. Mm-hmm. I claim no problem with this oppression. In your inner self, you will hate your father for doing it, you will develop a normal guy against authority. You know what would a postmodern permissive father tells you? I don't want to force you into anything. Go if you want, if not, no. Just beware how much your grandmother or aunt loves you and so on. Here, beneath the surface of a free choice, it's a much more tough injunction.
Yes.
What father is telling you is not only go and visit your grandmother, but you must freely choose to go and visit your grandmother. And that's the paradox of permissivity, and I think that's why psychoanalysis, it's only today coming to its own time. Because from the very beginning, Freud's problem was not paternal oppression, but was that a too permissive father who, let me give you, is much worse. Let me take you a very personal confession. It was my problem when I was 14, 15. My father asked me often, did you already have a girl? Do you want me to show you how you do it, and so on? And I find this so obscene, so indecent. It ruined my life for 2-3 years, proper function of paternity is precisely to create this distance.
Yes.
To create this small niches, domains where you have your freedom to enjoy. That's why one of the great comical strategies, some classical, even Charlie Chaplin, others do it sometimes, is that you think you are in this shady domain, but all of a sudden you discover everybody sees you. You know, this is almost my my preferred. So I'm not saying now we should return to paternal authority.
Right.
No, it's over that. I'm just saying that this standard, that's the paradox of political correctness. It's over-regulated permissivity.
Right.
And that's the danger. That's the danger.
Ultimately, an illusion of permission, as well.
Move the cup down. I can't have the Starbucks logo.
How do you know,
yeah, that's
how do you know
true.
you
That's
can't?
true.
Were you told that?
I'm sorry.
Did anybody tell you that?
Well, we've been taking the time to take the labels off the water.
I know, but I don't think that's necessary. I've never thought that was necessary either. All
Okay,
right.
I can maybe make.
Yeah.
No, you don't want to make fun of them.
We're almost done. It's
Yeah.
fine. Let me ask you: do you think there's a language that's the funniest language?
That's
Some languages, like we were in Nigeria, and they speak pidgin when they do stand-up, as opposed to their regular English. And there's a flow and a rhythm and a kind of cadence to it that's more fun to listen to in some ways.
it's not so much that languages are funny. One obsession I have, I like ridiculous mistranslations. That's the funniest aspect.
Right.
For example, in my country, Slovenia, I remember 1989-90, with the end of communism, you had private TV stations, and they were showing many old American blockbusters. And but they didn't want to spend money for good subtitles, so they hired students, or not even them. And they were like, and I remember one wonderful incident. They've shown that stupid Harrison Ford, Tom Clancy movie, Clear and Present Danger,
Right.
where Harrison Ford goes to the president and explodes because CIA bombed a village in Colombia, promising it will be a surgical strike, killing just the narco traffickers. No, they kill dozens of people. And he goes there to the president and shouts, "You promised me this will be a surgical strike." You know how the Slovene guy translated it? He took it literally to return into English. "You promised me surgeons will be on strike." Now, I try to imagine to take this seriously. What would have been, why would the president promise? The aspect of language that I like most is when such mistranslations, these comical elements, are not simply just a stupid mistake, but sometimes a true miracle happens. And through this mistake, a totally different new domain is opened.
Yes.
And Marx has this wonderful theory where he claims that the British democracy was the result of mistranslating some medieval documents and so on, Even here, with all my sympathy to Palestinians, all my recognition goes to Talmud. I quoted 2-3 times that it's the highest divine comedy. Every idiot can be comical about man. We are finite, stupid. Only Jews and Christians can do a divine comedy, not in a Dante sense, but it's a sense that God himself is even stupid. Do you know that story? And I checked it with Talmud specialists. It's not a joke. There are even 2 versions. It's a Jewish legend. It's sacred text. 2 rabbis are debating a theological point. And the one who is losing says, well, let's call for Jehovah to come to decide. And an old guy comes, yes, Jehovah comes. And then, you know what the other guy who was winning the debate does? He shouts at God, "Listen, you old guy, you did your stuff, you created the world, you did it badly, you screwed it up, so fuck off." And you know what's Jehovah's answer? "Oh my God, you are right, and he runs away." I think this is much better than all Gnosticism.
Right.
This idea that, and that's also for me the lesson of the book of Job,
Right.
is that God is all powerful, but morally a barbarian, stupid, and so on. You know.
Yes.
And this is, I think, something, this type of a comical aspect of God himself. That's maybe, I'm ready to call it the ultimate wisdom and so on and so on.
Right.
And this, up to a point, survives in Christianity, where the way I read crucifixion, it's not God sacrificed his son. It's, in some Gnostic tradition, they read crucifixion as God screwed it up all, and he sacrificed his son as a kind of apology to, sorry, I will give you my son as an apology because I screwed up creation to that extent and so on,
Yeah.
So I really believe then that these religions of the book, Christianity, Judaism, it's there, the first form of atheism. Can you imagine something more atheist than the book of Job?
Right.
Where
Exactly.
the lesson is, the true lesson is not, is Job being tested and so on. But then you remember when Job asks God, okay, but why did you do it? And God gives that bombastic speech, where were you when I created this monster? Chesterton, my favorite theologist, read this not as an assertion of divine arrogance, of fuck you, who are you, but as basically God's answer is, you think only you were in deep trouble, but look, it's mess everywhere what I created.
Yeah, that's funny.
There is, and this survives also in Protestant legacy of predestination, where basically, isn't this an extremely cruel, brutal God? He just plays dice. You are condemned or redeemed before and independently of what you will do, and so on and so on. So I am, as I define myself, I am a Christian atheist, I define myself. That there is a lesson which is so important that paradoxically, most of materialists for me are not true materialists.
Right.
Well,
are you suggesting that God is the ultimate comedian then?
Absolutely. Isn't this the lesson of Protestantism or of that story from the Talmud and so on and so on?
Yes.
Yes, God is the ultimate. What would be Isaac Asimov, the jokester?
Yes. Yeah, right. All right. I think we're good.
Thanks very much.
That was fantastic.
No.
What do you mean?
Please,
Yes.
I give you all the right. The nice joke. There was a debate in England in philosophy, and a professor claimed that while double no can be a yes, double yes cannot be a no. And he got an immediate answer from another famous philosopher. You know what he just said? Yeah. It means no.
Perfect. Yes.
It's perfect.
Yes, that's perfect. All right.
I like the last my Jewish jokes.
Yeah,
I love them.
Yes.
When I was in Israel the first time, I had a longer beard. I look a little like Rasputin madman. Okay. And I gave an interview there to some daily newspaper, and they asked me, why am I not practicing psychoanalysis? Okay. I gave them my standard answer. First part is, look at me. Like, don't you see I'm a madman? That, like, what an idiot would take me?
Yeah.
Second answer was...
Who would be your patient?
Yeah. Second answer was, look, I talk all the time. Can you imagine me for more than 20 seconds just sitting there and listening? But the third answer was the sincere one. And it's true. When you are in a tense situation of tension close to psychotic breakdown, one wrong gesture, you say the wrong word, it can push the patient to final madness, and that I wouldn't be able to sustain that tension. My God, this should be your ideal. I was so beautifully manipulated. You know what was the title next day? How they read this with one word? took a very Rasputin mad monk image on me and the big title, Slavoj Zizek. I can kill a person with one word, as if I meant that, know. It was so,
That's
I like, so another, did you see that wonderful documentary, The Thin Blue Line?
Yes, of course.
That somebody says that has this wonderful phrase, which I apply to journalism, that every idiotic prosecutor can get a guilty person convicted. It takes a really good prosecutor to take an innocent person convicted.
Yes.
Every idiotic guy who does interviews like you can faithfully reproduce what I said.
Yes.
It takes a really good interviewer to do the montage so that, respecting my works, you make me say the opposite of it.
Yes,
Please live up at the level.
That's my goal.
That should be your goal.
Yes, great. Thank you so much for talking. It's been great to meet you.
Just
I
cut
enjoyed
it short, do it.
Don't
Can
worry.
I now ask you an extremely disgusting thing?
Please.
I take in advance no as an answer.
Okay.
Okay, first point. My wife would love to meet you, and it's not a big thing and so on.
I would be honored.
When we make a jump, and now I come, but I'm not using you as a ladder. Say no in advance, it's really no pressure.
I understand.
To be vulgar, there are two Larrys.
Aha.
How is the other one? Is he very busy, or how it's possible to meet him, not my wife alone, me also, or is he out of touch?
If you come into Los Angeles, I promise you I will introduce you to Larry David and your wife.
Yeah, but I don't want to. If it's, I really mean this. I cannot say it nicely enough. I am ashamed to asking you this.
First of all, I think you'll find it to be a very comical and memorable encounter. Usually when
he is normal, like, as a person.
He is normal, but he is Larry David. So he sees things again in a very personal, unique way.
He is not like, this is the best description.
He is aware of who he is. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but that's the only honest way.
Yes.
Because you know what I want to say? Jürgen Habermas, the German philosopher, very arrogant.
Yes.
He has what I consider the worst strategy. Somebody told me that he treats you as equal, friendly, but in such a subtle way that the message is, you see, a great man like me can humiliate himself and treat you as equal.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, no, that wouldn't be the experience with Larry. I think you would find it to be great, actually. I think you would...
but it's, please, how should I put it? I'm so ashamed to mention this, that because I would hate to be asked something. So please, if there is a minimal trouble or whatever,
it's not going to be a problem when you let me know when you're going to be in Los Angeles.
And you are in good enough terms with him.
Absolutely. For that, yes.
Yeah.
Anything further? Now
I will do. I cannot get out of my vulgar anti-Semitic jokes.
Okay.
And for that, yes. So, but when it gets to money or what?
That's it. That's where he draws the line. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. He'd be happy to meet you.
But I'm so
excited.
Did you tell me this, or your assistant? It's so strange that she is not, that the house where Curb Your Enthusiasm, it's not really his house.
No.
I thought it would.
In fact, we have to change the house every season because the neighbors get upset with us for using the house. We rent that house for the year.
But this is so stupid. So in other words, they're not proud that.
No, they're annoyed. They're annoyed because the reality is there's noise going on all the time.
Yeah, okay. But
you have a bad neighbor. You have basically a bad neighbor, you know.
And you know what I like? The part I most like in that series is how you get the real stars playing small. Like,
yes.
How is it called? In one series, Elizabeth Banks, how is she called? Get a crush on him.
Yes, Salman Rushdie was on recently.
I saw that one.
If there's another season, you should do a cameo too.
Fatwa.
Yes,
Fatwa. I know him. I met him.
Yes. He was very good. He was very funny in the show.
How did you get him?
You would be too.
How did you get him?
You know, there's an agent involved. I don't know how they get them, but they're very easy to get. People want to be on the show. So it's not that hard.
And you know which part? It was vulgar, but lovely vulgar. You remember when he gets fucked by a Palestinian woman?
Yes,
and she shouts, "Oh, I will fuck you."
That's what gets rough. A lot of these clips that you're talking about from Curb illustrate a lot of the things that we've been talking about.
Precisely,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to
Yes,
say.
yes.
Let's just pray to God that he will not fall into some of. No, I believe he is a good guy privately,
Yes,
but in
yes.
these crazy times when he will get now stigmatized as violent, politically correct, you never know.
Well, he is the anti-Trump in a lot of ways because he has the same instincts of expressing himself that Trump does, kind of an uncensored, no governor, no
That
editor.
would be a wonderful attack on Trump. Like, not that you are vulgar, but sorry, I'm the big vulgar
That's
guy.
right,
You
that's
don't
right.
have the right to
There's
steal.
competition for that
Yeah,
mantle.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. No,
But-
I would love to. When you come to Los Angeles, we'll arrange that. That'd be my pleasure.
We'll have time. Okay,
All right, good.
listen, thanks very much.
Thank you very
now
much.
Now I go to take my sleep or
Yes,
whatever.
okay, good.
Because I came yesterday. What for an
Do you have
idiot-
more to do today, or can you just rest?
Sorry?
You have more stuff to do today?
No, just bureaucratic stuff, not
Oh, okay,
a problem.
okay, all
I
right,
just
very
have
good.
to go to the university now because tomorrow sorry, please, somebody has to take
Yeah,
this.
we'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so where are you heading to? Take a couple.
Yeah, take a couple.
Take another couple.
You know, I'm afraid of the pictures. I don't have any pictures of myself.
Really? I'm gonna send you one of these.
No.
Well, you're a very well chronicled person. You have a lot of photographs that are in the world.
But none of them, by